There is a single moment aboard a burning ship falling toward Coruscant, where the entire future of the galaxy balances on the edge of a blade. You know the moment. You have seen it. Two lightsabers, blue and green, crossed at the throat of a kneeling old man, Count Dooku, Darth Tyrannus, Sith Lord, leader of the Separatist cause, disarmed at last, both hands severed, kneeling helpless before the young Jedi he had toyed with only minutes before, and above him stands Anakin Skywalker, breathing hard, the Chancellor's voice still ringing in his ears. Kill him now, do it. In the galaxy you know, Anakin does it. He hesitates. For just a heartbeat, some part of him knowing it is wrong, some part of him hearing the Jedi teaching that a defeated enemy is a prisoner and not a corpse. And then he brings the blades together and takes Dooku's head. And in that single act, small as it seems against the scale of a galactic war, something is set in motion that cannot be called back. Anakin crosses a line. He murders a helpless prisoner on the order of a politician, and he tells himself it was justice, and he carries the lie of it forward into everything that follows. It is the first true step of the fall, not the largest, not the final, but the first, the one that makes all the others possible, the small dark seed from which the whole tragedy grows. Palpatine chose that moment carefully. He had been shaping Anakin toward it for 13 years. Dooku was always meant to die there, an apprentice sacrificed to bind a new one closer, a murder disguised as a victory, a boy's conscience broken on purpose so that the breaking would feel like strength. Everything the Sith had planned depended on Anakin making that choice, and Anakin made it, and the galaxy burned. But what if he didn't? What if, in that heartbeat of hesitation, that single instant where some part of Anakin Skywalker knew that killing a helpless prisoner was wrong, something reached him? What if a voice he had not heard in 13 years, a voice from before the war, before the council, before the slow poisoning of everything good in him, spoke in that exact moment and stopped his hand? What if Qui-Gon Jinn, dead a decade, one with the Force, the man who found Anakin, who believed in him when no one else would, who died with the boy's future as his last concern, reached across the veil between life and death at the one moment it mattered most, and stopped his grand-apprentice from taking that first irreversible step into the dark? That is the story we are going to explore today. Not a small change, not a footnote, because that one act of mercy, Dooku spared, kneeling and alive on the deck of the invisible hand, pulls a thread that unravels the entire tapestry of the fall. A living Dooku is a Sith Lord who knows the truth. A living Dooku is a witness. A living Dooku is a loose end in a plan that depended absolutely on there being no loose ends. And a living Dooku, spared by mercy when he expected death, is something that Palpatine, for all his genius, for all his foresight, did not plan for and cannot fully control. This is a long one, a full journey, the kind you settle in for. So get comfortable, get something to drink, and if you love these deep dives into the Star Wars that could have been, consider subscribing so you never miss one. We are going to walk this whole thread, all the way from that single moment of mercy to the galaxy it creates. A galaxy where the fall is stopped before it starts, where the hunt for the Sith becomes the great engine of the age, and where the man who is supposed to become Darth Vader instead becomes something the galaxy has never seen. Let's begin where it all turns. Let's begin on the burning ship. Return to the moment. The Invisible Hand, flagship of General Grievous, falling in a slow burning arc toward the towers of Coruscant. Obi-Wan Kenobi unconscious on the floor, buried under a fallen gantry, out of the fight. The Chancellor, Palpatine, Darth Sidious, the spider at the center of the whole web, sitting in the restraints of his supposed captivity, watching with hooded eyes, orchestrating every second of what he has arranged to unfold. And in the center of it, the duel, Anakin against Dooku, the rematch the young Jedi has hungered for since Geonosis, since the loss of his arm, since the humiliation of being beaten by a man twice his age. Only this time, Anakin wins. He has grown in 3 years of war. He is stronger than Dooku now, faster, and something in him has darkened enough to give him the edge that Serenity never could. He drives the Count back, and then in a flurry of blades he takes both of Dooku's hands at the wrist, and the Count's lightsaber clatters to the deck, and Dooku falls to his knees, disarmed and helpless, his aristocratic composure finally cracking into something like fear, and Anakin catches the falling lightsaber and crosses both blades at Dooku's throat, and above the kneeling Sith, he hears the Chancellor speak. Good Anakin, good. Kill him now. Anakin hesitates. In every version of this story, he hesitates. That hesitation is the last flicker of the Jedi in him, the last echo of everything he was taught, the last moment where the choice is still open and the future is not yet written. "I shouldn't," he says. "It's not the Jedi way." And Dooku, kneeling, watches the blades at his throat and waits to learn whether he is about to die. This is the moment. This is where the thread is cut in the galaxy, you know? And this is where, in the galaxy we are about to explore, something reaches across the veil, and everything changes. Before we follow the thread forward, let us slow down and live inside the duel itself, because everything turns on it and the details matter. The way the fight unfolds, the state Anakin is in, the precise machinery of the trap Sidious has laid, so that we feel the full weight of the moment when it all comes apart. Anakin comes aboard the invisible hand, already primed. Consider his state of mind as he strides through the burning corridors toward Dooku. He has spent 3 years at war, 3 years of mounting stress and loss, and the slow erosion of his Jedi serenity. He has been having the nightmares, Padme dying, screaming, and himself powerless to save her. And the nightmares have been feeding a desperate, growing fear. He has been drawing closer and closer to Palpatine, whose whispered poison has been steadily reframing Anakin's understanding of power and the Jedi and himself, and he carries, specifically, the wound of Geonosis, the humiliation of his first duel with Dooku, where the Count toyed with him, defeated him, and took his arm. Anakin has hungered for this rematch for 3 years. He wants it. And beneath the wanting is something darker, a desire not just to defeat Dooku, but to make him pay, to have vengeance, to prove himself by destroying the man who beat him. That is the Anakin who crosses blades with Dooku on the falling ship, skilled beyond measure, but emotionally raw, primed for the dark, carrying vengeance in his heart. And the duel plays to exactly that. Where Geonosis was a humiliation, this is a triumph. Anakin has grown enormously in 3 years, and he can feel it as the duel unfolds, can feel that he is the stronger now, the faster, the more powerful. He drives Dooku back. The Count, who toyed with him before, is now the one on the defensive, and Anakin can taste it, and the tasting is intoxicating. Some part of him is drawing on the very anger and hunger that Palpatine has cultivated, and that dark fuel is making him stronger, and he does not fully realize what it means that his strength in this moment is flowing partly from the shadow. The duel surges through the bridge of the crippled ship, blade against blade, the blue and the crimson, the force hurled back and forth, the whole sequence a showcase of two masters at war. Dooku fights with his elegant, precise, aristocratic style, the refined swordsmanship of a duelist who has never met his equal. But Anakin is past being outmatched now. He presses, and finally, in a decisive flurry, he catches both of Dooku's hands at the wrist and takes them, and the Count's saber falls, and Dooku drops to his knees, disarmed and helpless for the first time in the young Jedi's experience of him. And now comes the moment. Anakin catches the falling lightsaber. He crosses both blades, his own and Dooku's, blue and crimson, at the Count's throat. Dooku kneels, helpless, and for the first time his aristocratic composure cracks, because he understands that he is about to die, and that his own master arranged it. And above him, Anakin stands in the fullness of his triumph and his vengeance, the defeated enemy at his mercy, the rematch won, the humiliation of Geonosis avenged, and Palpatine speaks. "Good, Anakin, good." And then, when Anakin hesitates, kill him now. Understand what Palpatine is doing in this moment, because it is the culmination of 13 years of work. He is not merely encouraging a battlefield killing, he is engineering a specific psychological event, the murder of a helpless prisoner, ordered by an authority Anakin trusts, justified in the moment by the enemy's manifest evil. He is getting Anakin to cross a line, to execute a defenseless man, and to tell himself it was justified. Because once Anakin does that, once he murders a kneeling prisoner and rationalizes it as justice, he has established inside himself the moral machinery that makes every subsequent step possible. The killing of Dooku is not important to Palpatine, because Dooku dies. Dooku is an expendable apprentice, already marked for replacement. It is important because of what killing Dooku does to Anakin. It is the deliberate, engineered corruption of Anakin's conscience, disguised as a moment of triumph. And Anakin hesitates, because even now, even primed and raw and hungry for vengeance, some part of him knows, I shouldn't. It's not the Jedi way. That hesitation is the last line of defense, the final flicker of everything Anakin was taught and everything good in him, standing between the young man and the abyss. It is a thin line. It is nearly nothing. Palpatine's voice voice is louder, the vengeance is sweeter, the moment is primed for the killing. In the galaxy you know, the line does not hold. Anakin brings the blades together, and Dooku's head falls, and something in Anakin falls with it. A small dark seed planted that will grow over the following days and weeks into the full corruption of his fall. But this is the moment where the thread can be cut. This is the hinge, and it is precisely because the moment is so finely balanced, because Anakin's hesitation is real, because the light in him is not extinguished, because the choice genuinely hangs in the balance, that the smallest intervention can change it. Palpatine has built a trap of exquisite precision, calibrated across 13 years to produce exactly this outcome. And a trap of exquisite precision is a trap that the smallest counterforce, applied at exactly the right point, can break. Into that finely balanced moment, into the space of Anakin's hesitation, comes the voice. Not Palpatine's cold urging, but something warm and true, something Anakin has not heard in 13 years. Anakin, and the whole vast machinery of the fall, 13 years in the building, one heartbeat from completion, hangs suspended on which voice Anakin will heed, the cold or the warm, the murder or the mercy, the abyss or the light. We know now which one he chooses. But live in the moment before the choosing, because it is one of the most important moments in the history of the galaxy. A young man with two blades at an old man's throat, a politician's voice in one ear, and a dead master's voice in the other, the entire future balanced on the edge of a hesitation. Everything that follows, the whole galaxy we are about to explore, flows from what happens in that single suspended heartbeat aboard a burning ship falling toward Coruscant. To understand the full weight of what happens on that falling ship, to understand why a single act of mercy could shatter a scheme 1,000 years in the making, we have to understand what Palpatine had already done to Anakin Skywalker, and how very close the trap was to closing. Because the murder of Dooku was not an isolated moment, it was the culmination of 13 years of the most patient, meticulous psychological manipulation in the history of the galaxy. Palpatine did not simply happen to be present when Anakin's hand hovered over a helpless enemy. He had spent more than a decade engineering the young man who would make that choice, shaping him, isolating him, cultivating in him exactly the fears and angers and attachments that would one day make the fall possible. The Dooku duel was not the beginning of Anakin's corruption. It was meant to be the near end of it, the final blooding, the last step before the fall itself. Consider the long campaign of it. From the moment a 9-year-old Anakin arrived on Coruscant, Palpatine began to take an interest, a warm, avuncular, seemingly innocent interest in the promising young slave boy the Jedi had taken in. He made himself a friend, a mentor, a confidant who was always there, always understanding, always available when the cold and distant Jedi Council left Anakin feeling unseen and unvalued. And this friendship, which looked like kindness, was in truth the slow construction of a trap. Every conversation was a brick laid in a wall between Anakin and the Order. Every sympathetic word about the Council's rigidity, their distrust, their failure to appreciate Anakin's gifts, drove the wedge a little deeper. Palpatine was building, across years, an Anakin who trusted the Chancellor more than he trusted the Jedi, and who would therefore, when the crucial moment came, listen to the Chancellor's voice over the voice of everything he had been taught. Palpatine cultivated Anakin's fears with the same patience. He learned the young man's wounds, the trauma of slavery, the death of his mother, the terror of loss that came from a childhood of powerlessness, and he pressed on them, gently, constantly, keeping them raw. When Anakin's mother died, and the young Jedi slaughtered the Tusken Raiders in his grief and rage, it was a catastrophic step toward the dark, and Palpatine, had he known, would have rejoiced, because it was exactly the kind of moral compromise that made the next one easier. Palpatine understood that a person does not fall all at once. They fall in steps, each step a small surrender that makes the next surrender easier, each cross line lowering the threshold for the next. And he had spent 13 years walking Anakin down that path, one careful step at a time, toward the moment on the invisible hand where the young Jedi would murder a helpless prisoner and take, without quite realizing it, the largest step of all. And it very nearly worked. That is the thing we must sit with, to feel the weight of the mercy. In the galaxy, you know, it did work. Anakin killed Dooku, and the killing was the hinge, and from there the fall accelerated with terrible speed. The growing entanglement with Palpatine, the desperate fear for Padme, the nightmares, the temptation, and finally the moment in the Chancellor's office where Anakin chose the dark side and became Darth Vader. All of it flowed from the foundation Palpatine had laid across 13 years, and all of it was activated by that first murder. The mercy toward Dooku is not a small divergence. It is the interruption of a plan that had been 13 years in the making, and was, at that moment, one step from completion. Think of how close it was. Anakin's hand was on the blades. The Chancellor's voice was in his ear. 13 years of grooming had brought him to precisely this point, primed and ready, and the only thing standing between Anakin Skywalker and the first true step of his fall was a single heartbeat of hesitation. The last flicker of the Jedi in him, the last echo of the light. In the galaxy, you know, that flicker was not enough. Palpatine's voice was louder than Anakin's conscience, and the blades came together, and the galaxy fell, but the flicker was there. That is the crucial thing. Even after 13 years of the most expert corruption imaginable, even with the Chancellor's voice urging him on, even primed and ready for the fall, some part of Anakin still knew it was wrong. I shouldn't. It's not the Jedi way. The light in him was not extinguished. It was buried, nearly smothered, drowned out, but it was there, still burning, however faintly, and all it needed was for something to make it just a little louder than Palpatine's voice for one crucial moment. All it needed was a hand on the scale. That is what Qui-Gon provides. Not a transformation, not a magic healing, not the erasure of 13 years of corruption. Just a hand on the scale at the one moment it could matter. A voice, warm and true, tipping the balance from the murder to the mercy, from Palpatine's whisper to Anakin's own buried conscience. It is the smallest possible intervention, and because it comes at the exact hinge point of the entire scheme, the smallest possible intervention is enough to change everything. This is why the story is not a cheat, not a hand wave, not a lazy undoing of a great tragedy. The tragedy of the other galaxy was real and earned. Anakin's fall was the product of 13 years of masterful corruption and his own real weaknesses. But the fall was never certain. It hung, at the crucial moment, on a single heartbeat of hesitation. And the whole premise of the story is simply to ask what happens if, in that heartbeat, the light gets one word in edgewise. The answer, as we have seen, is everything. The whole galaxy turns on it, because Palpatine built a trap of exquisite and terrible precision, and a trap of exquisite precision is, by its nature, a trap that can be sprung by the smallest disturbance at exactly the right point. Qui-Gon does not smash the trap, he simply drops a single grain of sand into its mechanism at the one instant that matters, and the whole vast machine of the fall grinds, for the first time in 1,000 years of Sith planning, to a halt. The voice, when it comes, does not come from the Chancellor. It comes from somewhere else, from everywhere and nowhere, from inside Anakin and beyond him at once, a voice he has not heard with his ears in 13 years, and has never stopped hearing in the quiet places of his heart. It is warm where Palpatine's voice is cold, it is calm where the Chancellor's is urgent, and it speaks a single word, and the word lands in Anakin, like a stone dropped into deep water. Anakin, he goes still. The blades stay crossed at Dooku's throat, but Anakin's breath catches, because he knows that voice. He would know it anywhere. It is the voice of the man who found him on Tatooine, a slave boy with sand in his hair, and the whole force blazing in him unseen. The man who stood before the Jedi Council and staked his reputation on a 9-year-old nobody. The man who died on Naboo with a red blade through his chest and used his last breath to make Obi-Wan promise to train the boy. Qui-Gon Jinn, dead these 13 years, speaking now in the one moment Anakin most needs to hear him. This is not the dark side playing tricks. Anakin knows the difference. He has felt the dark side's whispers, the seductive cold of them, the way they flatter and inflame. This is the opposite of that. This is the living force itself, warm and clear, reaching through a soul that spent his whole short life listening for exactly this and never quite hearing it. Qui-Gon, one with the Force, has been watching over his grand-apprentice across the years, unable to reach him, unable to break through the noise of the war and the poison of Palpatine's influence and Anakin's own churning fear. But here, in this moment of perfect crisis, with the choice hanging open and Anakin's whole future balanced on the edge of the blades, here, the veil thins, and Qui-Gon speaks, and for the first time in 13 years, Anakin hears. This is not who you are, the voice says, not who I found, not who you were meant to be. He is beaten, Anakin, he is helpless. If you strike him down now, it is not justice, it is murder, and it will follow you into the dark for the rest of your life. Anakin's hands tremble on the hilts. Palpatine's voice cuts in again, sharper now, sensing that something has gone wrong, sensing that the moment is slipping. He's too dangerous to be left alive. Anakin, do it now. and for one terrible instant the two voices war in him, the cold and the warm, the murder and the mercy, the future that leads to the mask, and the future that leads somewhere else entirely. And Anakin Skywalker, breathing hard over the kneeling Count, looks at Dooku's face, really looks at it, sees not the arch-villain of his hatred, but an old man, disarmed, afraid, waiting to die on the word of a politician. And he hears Qui-Gon's voice one more time, quiet and certain beneath the Chancellor's urging, "Let him go, Anakin. Be better than they want you to be." And Anakin lowers the blades. It is the smallest motion in the world. A boy's arms coming down, two lightsabers deactivating with a soft double snap hiss, the blue and green light winking out. And yet it is one of the most important things that happens in the entire history of the galaxy, because in that motion, the fall is interrupted, the thread that Palpatine spent 13 years weaving is cut, and a future that was never supposed to exist flickers suddenly into possibility. Anakin steps back from the kneeling Count, his chest heaves, his mind is a storm. He does not fully understand what just happened, does not know for certain whose voice he heard, knows only that he was about to do something that some deep part of him screamed was wrong, and that he did not do it. He looks around the burning bridge as if waking from a dream. Obi-Wan, unconscious under the gantry. Dooku, disarmed and kneeling, staring up at him with an expression that is no longer fear, but something stranger, astonishment and calculation, and the dawning awareness of a man who was certain he was about to die, and finds himself, inexplicably, alive. And the Chancellor, Palpatine, sits in his restraints and watches, and for the first time in a very long time, something flickers across that carefully composed face that should never be there. Surprise, not large, not obvious. He masters it in an instant, folds it back into the mask of the concerned statesman. But it was there, for a fraction of a second, and Dooku who knows exactly who the Chancellor really is, Dooku who has served him for years, sees it, sees his master surprised, sees the plan, whatever it was, go wrong, and a Sith Lord who has just been spared by mercy, kneeling on the deck of a falling ship, watching his own master's composure crack, begins very quickly to think, because Dooku understands things that Anakin does not. Dooku knows why he was brought here. Dooku knows he was meant to die on this ship, knows it the way an apprentice always eventually knows it, that his master has been grooming a replacement, that this rescue was staged, that Anakin was meant to kill him and take his place at Sidious's side. He came aboard this ship expecting to help capture the young Jedi, and somewhere in the duel he realized the truth, that he was the one being captured, that the trap was for him, that Sidious had arranged his death and dressed it as a victory. He had made his peace with it, in the cold way of the Sith, expecting the blades to fall, and they did not fall. The boy showed mercy. The plan broke. And now Dooku kneels on the deck, alive, his master exposed and surprised above him. And in the ruthless, brilliant, self-preserving mind of Darth Tyrannus, a single thought begins to burn, bright and urgent and full of terrible possibility. He spared me. Sidious wanted me dead, and the boy spared me, which means, for the first time in my life, I am a variable my master did not account for. I am alive when I should be dead. And a dead man who finds himself living has nothing left to lose. What happens next happens fast, because the ship is falling and there is no time. And it is in the pressure of those few minutes that the new future takes its first real shape. Anakin, shaken and uncertain, does the thing a Jedi is supposed to do, the thing he was about to abandon forever a moment ago. He does not kill the prisoner, he secures him. Dooku's hands are gone, severed at the wrists. The Count is no threat now, a disarmed old man in every sense. Anakin binds him, hauls him up, and turns his attention to the two things that matter, getting Obi-Wan and getting off this ship before it burns up in the atmosphere. He wakes Obi-Wan, who comes to groggy and disbelieving, taking in the scene, the living Dooku, the strange look on his former apprentice's face, and the three Jedi and their prisoner make for the escape. Palpatine, through all of this, plays his part perfectly. He is the rescued Chancellor, grateful and shaken, urging haste, saying nothing that could betray him. But behind the mask, Darth Sidious is doing rapid and furious calculation, because his plan has failed in a way he did not anticipate, and now he must contain the damage. Dooku was supposed to die. Dooku's death was supposed to be the blooding of Anakin, the murder that would bind the boy to the dark and to Sidious. Instead, Dooku lives. Anakin's conscience is intact, and worst of all, Dooku is now a prisoner of the Jedi, a Sith Lord, captured alive, who knows everything, who knows that the Chancellor is the Sith Master, who could, with a single sentence, unravel 13 years of the most patient scheme in galactic history. Sidious's every instinct screams to have Dooku killed, quietly, quickly, before he can talk, but he cannot, not here, not now, not without exposing himself. He is playing the helpless captive. He cannot suddenly order the death of a prisoner. He must let Dooku be taken. He must let the loose end walk right off this ship and into Jedi custody, and trust that he can arrange the Count's silence later, through channels, through the vast machinery of proxies and agents he has spent a lifetime building. It is the first time in the entire saga that Palpatine is forced to improvise from a position of weakness, and he does not like it, and Dooku, watching him, knows he does not like it, and files that knowledge away like the weapon it is. They escape the invisible hand. Anakin, because of course, it is Anakin, the finest pilot in the galaxy, brings the broken remnant of the falling ship down through the atmosphere in a landing that should have killed them all, and doesn't. They come down on Coruscant alive. 2 Jedi, a rescued Chancellor, and a captured Sith Lord, and the moment they are on the ground, the machinery of the Republic closes around them, and the new future begins in earnest. Because a captured Dooku changes everything, immediately and irreversibly. In the galaxy, you know, Dooku died on that ship, and his death closed a door. The Separatist leadership rolled on without him. Grievous fled, the war continued its scripted path toward the moment when Palpatine would spring his final trap. But a living, captured Dooku is not a closed door. He is an open one, and behind that door is every secret the Sith have spent a millennium keeping. The Jedi have never, in 1,000 years, held a Sith Lord prisoner. They have killed them, been killed by them, but never captured one alive, and had the chance to question him. Now they have. The leader of the Separatists, the public face of the enemy, the Sith apprentice himself, in a cell on Coruscant, alive, and everyone wants him. The Jedi Council wants to question him about the Sith, about the war, about the shadowy master that Dooku once hinted at to Obi-Wan on Geonosis, the Sith Lord, who, Dooku claimed, controlled the Senate itself. The Senate wants him tried, publicly, as a war criminal, a symbol of separatist villainy to rally the Republic. The military wants his strategic knowledge, and Palpatine wants him dead, silently and immediately, and cannot say so, and must instead work in the shadows to ensure that the Count never gets the chance to speak the one truth that would end everything. The tension of the entire new story is set in these first hours. A Sith Lord who knows the ultimate secret, held prisoner by the people that secret would save. A Sith Master desperate to silence him, forced to move carefully lest he expose himself. And in the middle, a young Jedi who does not yet understand what he has done, who spared a life on the whisper of a ghost, and in doing so, has handed the galaxy the one thing that can unravel the darkness: a witness. Anakin himself, in these first hours, is a man adrift. He keeps replaying the moment on the ship, the voice, the choice, the strange certainty that stopped his hand. He does not tell anyone about the voice at first. How could he? Grandmaster Yoda, perhaps, would understand, but Anakin has never felt he could speak freely to the Council, has always felt their suspicion, their coldness, their sense that he did not quite belong, so he carries it alone. The memory of Qui-Gon's voice, the mercy it produced, and the growing, disquieting awareness that something happened to him on that ship that he does not have the framework to understand. He was about to fall. He knows that now, in some wordless way, knows that he stood at an edge and was pulled back from it, but he does not know by what or why, or what it means for the man he is becoming. And Palpatine, watching his prized project slip toward the light instead of the dark, understands it far better than Anakin does. The Chancellor has spent 13 years cultivating this boy, and he can feel the cultivation coming undone. The mercy on the ship was not a small thing to Sidious, it was a catastrophe. It means something reached Anakin that Sidious does not control. It means the boy has a door in him that opens toward the light, and that something, used it. And Darth Sidious, master manipulator, patient beyond reckoning, begins to plan how to close that door forever. He has lost the murder of Dooku. He will not lose the soul of Anakin Skywalker, not when he is this close, not after all these years. The board is set. The war for Anakin's future has begun again. But this time, for the first time, the light has struck first. Dooku in a cell is one of the most dangerous things in the galaxy, and everyone who deals with him in the days that follow comes to understand it. He is not a broken prisoner. He is not frightened, not any longer. Whatever fear cracked his composure on the ship has been folded back into the cold, aristocratic control that has defined him for a lifetime. He sits in his cell on Coruscant, handless, stripped of his lightsaber and his armies and his rank, and he is still, unmistakably, the most self-possessed being anyone who visits him has ever met, because Dooku understands his situation with perfect clarity, and he has already grasped the one truth that makes him powerful even in chains. He knows something that could win the war, and everyone who wants it must come to him to get it. Dooku knows who the Sith Master is. He knows the Chancellor is Darth Sidious. He has known for years. He has served the man, been Sidious's apprentice, executed his schemes, and now he sits in a Jedi cell, and the single sentence, "The Chancellor is a Sith Lord," burns in him, and he holds it, because Dooku is far too clever to simply blurt out the truth and be dismissed as a liar. He understands that the truth, spoken carelessly, would be worthless. A captured enemy's desperate slander, easily denied, impossible to prove, and fatal to him the moment Sidious's agents heard he was talking. To speak the truth safely, to make it land, to survive the speaking of it, Dooku must be strategic. He must choose his moment, his audience, his leverage. And so he waits, and he calculates, and he plays the longest and most dangerous game of his long and dangerous life. His first calculation is about his master. Dooku knows that Sidious wants him dead, and knows why, because Dooku is now the single greatest threat to the entire scheme. Every hour Dooku lives is an hour in which the truth might escape, and so Dooku knows, with grim certainty, that his former master is even now working to have him silenced, that agents are being moved, that accidents are being arranged, that the vast machinery of Sidious's hidden power is turning toward the problem of Dooku's mouth. His life is measured in days, perhaps hours, unless he can make himself more valuable alive than dead to someone powerful enough to protect him. His survival depends on becoming useful to the Jedi faster than Sidious can arrange his death. His second calculation is about the Jedi themselves, and here Dooku's contempt and his cunning war with each other. He has spent years despising the Jedi Order. He was one of them once, a master, and he left in disillusionment, convinced the Order was corrupt and blind and complicit in a rotten republic. That contempt is real, but contempt is a luxury he can no longer afford, because the Jedi are now the only power that can protect him from Sidious, and more than that, they are the instrument through which he might do the one thing that now consumes him, revenge, because Dooku has been betrayed. His master arranged his death, discarded him like a used tool, and that betrayal has lit something in the old Sith that is more dangerous than any loyalty ever was. Dooku wants Sidious to fall, not out of any conversion to the light. Dooku is no penitent, and the story does not pretend he is, but out of the oldest Sith motivation of all, the apprentice, discarded, turning on the master who discarded him. And so Dooku begins to talk, carefully, partially, strategically. He does not give the Jedi the truth all at once. He doles it out, a piece at a time, making himself indispensable, making them come back to him again and again, buying his survival one revelation at a time. He confirms what he told Obi-Wan on Geonosis all those years ago, that a Sith Lord controls the Senate, that the war itself is a Sith construction, that both sides have been played from the beginning by a single hidden hand. He tells them enough to prove he is not lying, enough to make the Council's blood run cold, enough to open the great question that will drive the entire hunt. If a Sith Lord controls the Senate, then who is it? He does not at first give the name. That is his final card, his last leverage, the one piece of information that keeps him alive, and he will not play it until he is certain that playing it will destroy Sidious rather than merely getting himself killed, because Dooku understands the trap of the truth better than anyone. To accuse the Chancellor of the Republic, the most popular man in the galaxy, the beloved wartime leader, of being the Sith Lord, on the word of a captured enemy war criminal, is to invite instant dismissal and instant death. Sidious has spent a lifetime making himself unaccusable. Dooku must find a way to make the accusations stick, to give the Jedi not just the name, but the proof, or the name is worthless, and Dooku is dead. This is the engine of the new story, and it is a thriller engine, taut and patient, and full of dread. A Sith Lord in a cell, holding the ultimate secret, playing his revenge against his master's desperation to silence him. A hidden Sith Master, exposed and cornered for the first time in his life, working through shadows to kill the one witness who can destroy him, and the Jedi Order, caught between them, suddenly and unexpectedly holding the thread that could unravel the entire darkness, if they can pull it before the darkness cuts it. The Council reacts to Dooku's revelations with a mixture of vindication and horror. Vindication, because they have long sensed the shadow of the Sith behind the war, long felt their vision clouded, long suspected a hidden hand, and now, from the mouth of a captured Sith Lord, comes confirmation that they were right. Horror, because the confirmation means the enemy has been among them all along, in the very heart of the Republic, controlling the Senate, moving the war like a game of Daejerik, and they never saw it. The Jedi have been blind, and their blindness has cost the galaxy 3 years of war and countless lives, and the architect of it all sits somewhere in the government they have been defending with their lives. Yoda, ancient and grave, feels the truth of it settle into him, and feels also the danger of it, because a hidden Sith Master, exposed, is a Sith Master at his most lethal. A cornered enemy is a desperate one, and Yoda understands that the moment Sidious realizes the Jedi are truly hunting him, truly closing in, truly in possession of a witness who can name him, he will not wait quietly to be caught, he will strike. He has a plan for exactly this contingency, surely. A being that patient does not leave himself without an escape. The hunt for the Sith Master has become a race, and the prize is the galaxy, and the Jedi do not yet know how little time they have. And through it all, threading beneath the great game of Dooku and Sidious and the Council, runs the quieter and in some ways deeper story, the story of Anakin, and the voice he heard, and the fall that did not happen. Because Dooku is the engine of the plot, but Anakin is the heart of it, and the two threads are about to become impossible to separate. The scenes between Dooku and his interrogators deserve to be lingered on, because they are among the most electric in the whole story. A duel of minds every bit as tense as any duel of blades, and the place where the thriller truly comes alive. Picture the setting, a secure detention level deep in a Jedi facility on Coruscant, a cell designed to hold a Force user, the Salamiri analogs, energy dampeners, whatever mechanisms the Order has devised across the centuries, for the rare and dangerous task of containing one who wields the Force. And within it, Dooku, seated with perfect aristocratic composure, his severed wrists a constant reminder of his defeat, and yet somehow, in his bearing, not diminished at all. A man who has lost his hands, his armies, his rank, his freedom, and who still radiates the absolute self-possession of one who believes himself the smartest person in any room, which, in most rooms, he is. His interrogators come to him one by one and in groups, and each encounter is a chess match. Obi-Wan comes. Obi-Wan, who dueled Dooku on Geonosis and lost, who has a personal history with the Count, who knows him better than most. Their exchanges crackle with a strange mutual respect and mutual wariness. Two skilled duelists, who have moved to a different kind of combat. Dooku probes Obi-Wan for weaknesses, for leverage, for information he can use. Obi-Wan probes Dooku for the truth beneath the maneuvering. And through it all, runs the memory of Geonosis, where Dooku, before their duel, told Obi-Wan the truth, that a Sith Lord controlled the Senate, and Obi-Wan, unable to believe it, dismissed it. Now that dismissed truth hangs between them, and both of them know it, and Dooku cannot resist the cold pleasure of reminding Obi-Wan, I told you, years ago, I told you the truth, and you would not hear it. How many have died because you would not hear it? It is a barb designed to wound, and it lands because it is true. Obi-Wan did hear the truth on Geonosis, and did dismiss it, and the war ground on for 3 more years, partly because the Jedi could not bring themselves to believe what Dooku told them. The Count uses this masterfully, establishing his own credibility by pointing to the truth he told before, making the Jedi feel the cost of having disbelieved him, positioning himself as the one honest voice they foolishly ignored. It is manipulation, of course. Everything Dooku does is manipulation, but it is manipulation built on a real foundation, and that is what makes it so effective. Yoda comes too, and the encounters between Yoda and Dooku are the deepest of all because they were once master and student. Dooku trained under Yoda long ago, before he fell, was one of the ancient master's most gifted pupils, before disillusionment and pride, and finally the dark side took him. And so between them lies not just the enmity of Jedi and Sith, but the specific grief of a teacher who lost a beloved student to the dark, and a student who came to despise the teacher he once revered. Their conversations are quiet and sad and layered with a history that neither fully speaks aloud. Yoda searches, in the fallen Dooku, for any remaining ember of the student he loved. Dooku, for his part, cannot quite maintain his contempt in Yoda's presence. Some old thread of respect, of shame, of the relationship they once had complicates his aristocratic coldness. It is in these encounters that the story hints at the tragedy of Dooku most powerfully. Not a monster born, but a good man who fell, who might once have been saved, who chose the dark out of a despair that had some truth in it, and let that truth poison him entirely. And Anakin comes, and the Anakin Dooku encounters are the most charged of all because of everything that lies between them. Dooku took Anakin's arm on Geonosis. Anakin spared Dooku's life on the invisible hand. Between them is defeat and mercy, hatred and gratitude, and the strange bond of two men whom Sidious used and discarded. When Anakin visits the cell, the dynamic is unlike any of the others. Dooku does not condescend to Anakin the way he condescends to the rest. He has too much respect, now, for the young man who did the one thing Dooku did not expect, and Anakin does not hate Dooku the way he once did. The mercy on the ship burned away the hatred, replaced it with something more complicated. They speak, across the bars, as two people who understand something about each other that no one else understands. The experience of being caught in Sidious's web, of being shaped and used by that patient, poisonous mind. It is in these encounters that Dooku, almost despite himself, begins to tell Anakin things he tells no one else. Because Dooku sees in Anakin a kind of kindred spirit, the apprentice Sidious wanted, the replacement Dooku was being discarded for, and yet also, strangely, a fellow victim. And Dooku, who has spent his life in cold isolation, who trusts no one, who has been betrayed by his own master, finds in the young Jedi, who spared him the closest thing to genuine connection he has felt in years. He warns Anakin about Sidious, not just the political truth, but the personal one. He tells Anakin what it is to be used by that mind, how Sidious finds your deepest need and turns it into the leash by which he leads you. He tells Anakin, in effect, everything Sidious did to Dooku himself, the seduction, the manipulation, the slow transformation of a disillusioned idealist into a Sith Lord. And in the telling, he is really warning Anakin about what Sidious has been doing to him. Does Dooku do this out of kindness? No, nothing Dooku does is purely kind. He does it partly to turn Anakin against Sidious, which serves Dooku's revenge. He does it partly to bind Anakin to him, to make the young Jedi an ally and a protector. He does it partly, perhaps, out of the simple human need to be understood by someone before the end, a need even a Sith Lord cannot fully suppress. His motives are tangled and largely self-serving, but the effect is profound because Dooku, warning Anakin about Sidious out of his own dark motives, becomes one of the voices that saves Anakin from the fall. The old Sith, playing his own game, unwittingly does the light's work, helping to open Anakin's eyes to the truth about the man who nearly destroyed him. These interrogation scenes, taken together, are the slow-burning heart of the story's middle. They are where the truth about Sidious is assembled piece by piece. They are where the strange bond between Anakin and Dooku forms. They are where the tragedy of Dooku's own fall is revealed, casting a shadow light on the fall Anakin, so narrowly avoided. And they are where the tension coils tighter and tighter, because every revelation brings the Jedi closer to Sidious, and every day brings Sidious closer to silencing the witness, and the whole story hums with the dread of a race that could still be lost. Anakin Skywalker is a different man after the invisible hand, and the difference is subtle at first, and then it is not subtle at all. In the galaxy you know, Anakin came off that ship a murderer, though he told himself otherwise. He had killed a helpless prisoner on the order of a politician, and the axe sat in him like a swallowed stone, and to keep from feeling its weight, he had to keep telling himself the lie, that it was justice, that Dooku deserved it, that a Jedi sometimes has to do hard things. Every lie he told himself to justify that killing made the next lie easier, and the next, until he had built inside himself the whole scaffolding of rationalization that would eventually let him march on the temple. The murder of Dooku was not just a crime, it was a corruption of the conscience, a deliberate breaking of his own moral sense, and it made everything that followed possible. But this Anakin did not kill Dooku. This Anakin showed mercy, and mercy, it turns out, corrupts nothing. It heals. Where the murder would have started a rot in him, the mercy starts something else. A slow, uncertain, but real reconnection with the part of himself he had been losing. Because in the act of sparing Dooku, in the act of hearing Qui-Gon's voice and heeding it, Anakin did something he had not done in a long time. He chose the light in a moment when the dark was easier. He listened to the better voice. And a soul that does that once finds it a little easier to do it again. He is not healed. Let us be clear about that, because the story would be false if it pretended one act of mercy fixed everything. Anakin is still a churning mass of fear and attachment and anger. He still has the prophetic nightmares of Padme dying in childbirth. Those have not stopped, and they still terrify him, and they are still the great lever by which Palpatine intends to move him toward the dark. He still has the wound of his mother's death, the fear of loss, the desperate need to control and protect that has always been his weakness. He is still, in many ways, the same tormented young man, but he has been given something he did not have before, a crack of light, a moment of proof that he can choose differently, and a mystery that will not let him rest. Whose voice was that, and why did it come, and what does it mean? It is that mystery that begins to change him, because it drives him back toward Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon is exactly the influence Anakin has needed and lacked for 13 years. Think about what Anakin lost when Qui-Gon died on Naboo. He lost the one Jedi who believed in him without reservation, who saw him not as a dangerous prophecy or a problem to be managed, but as a boy worth saving. Obi-Wan loved Anakin deeply, but Obi-Wan trained him out of a deathbed promise, reluctantly at first, and their relationship always carried the strain of the brotherly, rather than the paternal. More equals bickering than master and student. The Council never trusted Anakin, never warmed to him, kept him always at a slight cold distance that he felt keenly and resented. And Palpatine filled the void, the false father, the patient manipulator who gave Anakin the validation and understanding the Order withheld, and used that role to guide him step by step toward the dark. But Qui-Gon would have been different. Qui-Gon was a maverick, a Jedi who trusted the living force over the rules of the Council, who followed his own moral compass even when it cost him, who saw Anakin's compassion and attachment not as flaws to be purged, but as strengths to be guided. If Qui-Gon had lived and trained Anakin, everything might have been different. The boy might have grown up with a mentor who understood him, who taught him to hold his powerful feelings without being ruled by them, who never left the void that Palpatine filled. Qui-Gon's death was, in a sense, the first domino of the whole tragedy, and now Qui-Gon is back, not in the flesh, but as a presence, a voice, a guide reaching across the veil. Because the breakthrough on the invisible hand was not a one-time event, having reached Anakin once, in the crisis, Qui-Gon can reach him again. It is not easy. The veil between the living and the Force is real, and communion across it is difficult and rare, and Qui-Gon can only come through in moments of stillness, of openness, of genuine seeking. But Anakin, shaken and searching after the ship, begins to seek. He begins to meditate, really meditate, not the rote exercises of his training, but a genuine reaching out toward the voice he heard, and slowly, in fragments, Qui-Gon comes to him. What follows is the mentorship Anakin never had, arriving 13 years too late, and yet exactly in time. Qui-Gon becomes, from beyond death, the guide Anakin lost. The voice that helps him understand his own fear, that teaches him to hold his attachments without being enslaved by them, that offers him a model of the Jedi that is not the cold rule-bound detachment of the Council, but something warmer, wiser, more alive. Qui-Gon does not tell Anakin to purge his love for Padme. He tells him to stop being ruled by the fear of losing her. He does not tell Anakin to feel nothing. He tells him that a Jedi feels everything and chooses the light anyway. It is the teaching that might have saved Anakin the first time, and now, through the strange grace of the Force, he is receiving it after all. And there is something else Qui-Gon brings, something that begins to matter enormously as the hunt for Sidious intensifies. Qui-Gon, one with the Force, can see more clearly than any living Jedi. He is not omniscient. The future is always in motion, and the dark side clouds much even from those beyond the veil. But he perceives the shape of things, the currents, the great danger gathering, and Qui-Gon begins, carefully, to warn. to guide Anakin not only toward his own healing, but toward the truth that the living Jedi are only beginning to grasp, that the enemy is not on some distant separatist world, but here, at the heart of everything, wearing the face of a friend. Anakin does not want to believe it. Palpatine has been a father to him, the one person in power who ever truly seemed to understand him. The suggestion that the Chancellor might be the very darkness they hunt is, at first, unthinkable to Anakin, a betrayal of the man he trusts most, and this is the terrible pivot on which Anakin's whole arc now turns. In the galaxy you know, Anakin's trust in Palpatine was the thread by which Sidious pulled him into the dark. Here, that same trust becomes the greatest obstacle to the truth, and the breaking of it when it comes will be the most painful and most important thing that happens to Anakin Skywalker in his entire life, because the hunt for the Sith Master is not, in the end, only a political thriller or a war story. It is the story of Anakin discovering that the man he loved and trusted was the architect of all his suffering, and choosing, in the face of that shattering betrayal, not to fall into the dark it opens beneath him, but to become the instrument of the darkness's undoing. Qui-Gon is preparing him for that moment. Every fragment of communion, every whispered teaching, every gentle warning is laying the groundwork for the day Anakin must face the truth about Palpatine and not break. The mercy on the ship opened the door. What comes through it will decide the fate of the galaxy. There is a dimension to this story that runs beneath all the politics and the duels and the thriller machinery, and it belongs to Yoda and to the profound spiritual revelation that Qui-Gon's return represents. A revelation that reshapes the Jedi understanding of the Force, of death, and of the mistakes that nearly destroyed them. Because here's a thing easy to overlook in the rush of the plot. The fact that Qui-Gon Jinn can speak to Anakin from beyond death is, by itself, one of the most important discoveries in the history of the Jedi Order. For 1,000 years and more, the Jedi believed that death was the end of individual consciousness, that when a Jedi died, they became one with the Force in a way that dissolved the self, that returned their energy to the great flow, but did not preserve them as a person who could think and choose and reach back to the living. The idea of retaining one's identity after death, of becoming a conscious presence in the Force able to communicate with the living, had been lost to the Order. It was ancient knowledge, forgotten, and its loss was part of the Order's long, slow drift away from the deeper mysteries of the Force. Qui-Gon, in the galaxy you know, was the one who rediscovered it, or rather, who was taught it from beyond death, and who in turn taught Yoda and Obi-Wan in the final days. But that came too late to save anything. It was a consolation in defeat, a mystery revealed only after the Order was already destroyed. Here, Qui-Gon's return comes earlier, and it comes not as a consolation, but as an active force in the salvation of the galaxy, and it forces the living Jedi, Yoda above all, to reckon with the enormity of what it means. When Anakin finally brings the truth of his experience to Yoda, when he tells the ancient master about the voice on the ship, about the communion with Qui-Gon, about the guidance from beyond the veil, it lands in Yoda like a revelation, because it confirms and completes something Yoda has been sensing for years. Yoda has felt Qui-Gon's presence, faintly in his meditations. He has caught, at the edges of the Force, hints of a consciousness that should not, by the Order's understanding, exist. And now, Anakin gives him the confirmation. Qui-Gon lives, in the Force, as himself, and can reach the living, and has been doing so to save Anakin from the fall. For Yoda, this is transformative, and the story lets him sit with its full weight, because it means the Order was wrong. Wrong about death, wrong about the Force, wrong about one of the most fundamental questions of Jedi existence. And if the Order was wrong about that, what else was it wrong about? The discovery of Qui-Gon's survival becomes, for Yoda, the thread that unravels a much larger reckoning. A reckoning with all the ways the Order has drifted, has forgotten, has grown rigid and blind, and disconnected from the living Force it was meant to serve. The same rigidity that lost the knowledge of life after death is the rigidity that failed to see the Sith hiding in plain sight, that held Anakin at arm's length and drove him toward Palpatine, that entangled the Order in a war it should have questioned. The forgotten mystery and the near catastrophe are two symptoms of the same disease, an Order that had lost its living connection to the Force and replaced it with rules, dogma, and pride. And Qui-Gon, from beyond the veil, becomes the teacher of this reckoning, not just to Anakin, but through Anakin and through Yoda, to the whole Order, because Qui-Gon was always the one who understood. He was the maverick who trusted the living Force over the Council's rules, who followed his own moral compass, who saw the mystery where others saw only doctrine. In life, the Order marginalized him for it. A brilliant Jedi who never sat on the Council, held back by his refusal to conform. And now, in death, He is vindicated, absolutely. Everything Qui-Gon believed, the Order's near destruction proves true. His trust in the living force, his belief in compassion and connection, his willingness to see the individual rather than the rule, these were not the eccentricities of a difficult Jedi. They were the wisdom the Order abandoned to its peril. Yoda, ancient and humble enough to learn even after 900 years, takes this lesson to heart, and it becomes the seed of the Order's transformation. The Yoda of the other galaxy learned these truths too, but only at the very end, in exile, after everything was lost, when the learning could only prepare him to train one last hope in the far future. Here, Yoda learns them while there is still an Order to reform, still a galaxy to save, still time to act on the wisdom, and that timing makes all the difference. The reckoning that came too late in one galaxy comes just in time in this one. Yoda, guided by the returned Qui-Gon and the transformed Anakin, begins to lead the Order back toward the living force, back toward the compassion and connection and humility it had lost, back toward the deeper wisdom that its long, comfortable centuries had allowed to atrophy. There is a beautiful symmetry in this. The story began with Qui-Gon reaching across death to save one soul, Anakin, on the ship, and it widens into Qui-Gon through that single act, saving the whole Order, because the salvation of Anakin leads to the exposure of Sidious, and the exposure of Sidious leads to the reckoning of the Order, and the reckoning of the Order leads to its transformation and renewal. One voice, reaching across the veil at the right moment, saves a young man, and the saving of the young man saves the galaxy, and the saving of the galaxy becomes the occasion for the Order to rediscover everything it had forgotten. The smallest intervention, the largest consequence, a dead man's whisper, and the rebirth of the Jedi, and beneath it all is the deepest spiritual truth the story offers, that death is not the end, that the bonds of love and teaching and connection persist beyond the veil, that a master who dies can still reach the student he loves, that nothing truly good is ever wholly lost. Qui-Gon died on Naboo, and in the galaxy, you know, his death was the first domino of the tragedy, the loss of the one mentor who might have saved Anakin. But death, it turns out, was not the end of Qui-Gon, nor of his love for the boy he found, nor of his ability to guide him, and so, the very tragedy that seemed to doom Anakin, the death of Qui-Gon, becomes, through the persistence of the soul beyond death, the source of his salvation. The master who died is the master who saves him. Love reaches across the grave, and the galaxy is redeemed by it. While the Jedi question Dooku and Qui-Gon reaches for Anakin, Darth Sidious does what Darth Sidious has always done best. He adapts. And a cornered Sidious is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. Understand the position he is in, because it is unprecedented in his long career. For 13 years, for far longer, really, across the whole span of his rise, Palpatine has operated from a position of perfect concealment. No one knew, no one suspected. He moved through the galaxy as the benevolent Chancellor, while secretly conducting both sides of a war, and the beauty of his scheme was that it was invisible, that the Jedi were hunting a shadow they could not even prove existed. His power was his secrecy, and now, for the first time, that secrecy is cracked. There is a witness. Dooku knows. Dooku is talking, and every word the Count speaks brings the Jedi closer to the unthinkable truth. The invisible hand is in danger of being seen. Sidious's first and most urgent priority is obvious. Silence Dooku. The Count must die before he speaks the name, but this is far harder than it sounds, because Dooku is in Jedi custody, guarded, watched, protected, and because Sidious cannot be seen to want him dead. If Dooku dies conveniently the moment after being captured, the Jedi will ask who benefited, and the answer points uncomfortably close to the Chancellor. Sidious must arrange the death to look like something else: a Separatist rescue gone wrong, an accident, a suicide, the work of some third party, and he must do it through so many layers of proxies that nothing can be traced back to him. This takes time, and time is the one thing Sidious cannot fully control, because every day Dooku lives is a day he might speak. So Sidious moves on multiple fronts at once, with the terrible competence of a mind that has planned for every contingency. He sets his agents to work on the problem of Dooku's death. He works the political angle, using his influence to push for Dooku to be tried and executed swiftly and publicly, because a legal execution, engineered through the courts, would silence the Count with perfect deniability, the Republic itself doing Sidious's work for him. He works to discredit Dooku in advance, seeding the idea through his political network that the Count is a manipulator, a liar, a spinner of desperate falsehoods, who will say anything to save his own skin, so that when Dooku finally does speak the name, it will be dismissed as exactly the kind of lie everyone was warned to expect. Sidious is laying the groundwork to make the truth unbelievable before it is even spoken. It is a masterstroke, and it very nearly works. And Sidious does not neglect Anakin. If anything, the boy's mercy on the ship has made Sidious more determined than ever to reclaim him, because Anakin is not just a prize, he is a weapon, and a weapon Sidious has invested 13 years in forging. The Chancellor can feel Anakin slipping. He can sense the change in the boy, the new distance, the questions. He does not yet know about Qui-Gon. The communion with the Force Ghost is hidden even from Sidious's considerable perception, but he can feel the effect of it, the way Anakin is pulling back from the dark path Sidious so carefully laid, and so Sidious redoubles his manipulation, playing every card he has cultivated over the years. The false fatherly warmth, the flattery, the careful poison about the Jedi Council's distrust of Anakin, and above all, the great lever, the fear of Padme's death. He reminds Anakin, in their private conversations, of the nightmares. He hints that the Jedi cannot help him save her, that only deeper knowledge of the Force, knowledge the Jedi forbid, could give Anakin the power to keep her alive. He works, patiently and expertly, to reopen every wound and reawaken every fear, to pull Anakin back toward the desperate hunger for power that is the surest road to the dark. And this is where the two threads of the story wind together into something almost unbearably tense, because Anakin is now caught in the exact center of the war between Sidious and the truth. On one side, the Chancellor, his mentor, his friend, the man he has trusted above all others, working with all his terrible skill to pull Anakin back into the dark. On the other, Qui-Gon and the growing evidence and the whispered warnings, all pointing toward the impossible conclusion that the Chancellor is the enemy. Anakin does not want to believe it. Every instinct of loyalty and love and gratitude rebels against it. And Sidious, sensing the boy's resistance to the truth, uses that loyalty as a shield, wrapping himself in Anakin's trust, making the young Jedi his unwitting defender against the very suspicions that are closing in. There is a terrible irony here, and the story leans into it. In the galaxy you know, Anakin's trust in Palpatine was the instrument of his fall. Here, that same trust becomes the instrument by which Sidious tries to survive. Anakin, not yet believing the truth about the Chancellor, becomes an obstacle to the Jedi hunt, dismissing the suspicions, defending his friend, unknowingly shielding the very darkness that the whole galaxy needs destroyed. Sidious hides behind the boy he corrupted, and the tragedy of it is that Anakin's loyalty, which is in itself a good and noble thing, has been so thoroughly manipulated that it now serves the darkness, even as Anakin himself is turning back toward the light. The attempt to silence Dooku comes to a head in a sequence of real tension. Sidious's agents make their move, an engineered attack on the detention facility, designed to look like a separatist strike aimed at freeing the Count, but actually intended to kill him in the chaos. It is a good plan, it nearly succeeds, and it fails for a reason Sidious could not have predicted, because Anakin, drawn by the Force, by Qui-Gon's guidance, by his own unresolved need to understand the man whose life he spared, happens to be near the detention center when the attack comes. And Anakin, still one of the most formidable Jedi alive, mercy or no mercy, stops it. He fights off the attackers, protects the prisoner he once nearly killed, and keeps Dooku alive. It is a moment thick with irony and meaning. Anakin, who spared Dooku on the ship, now saves him again, and in doing so, unknowingly thwarts his own secret master's most important move. Sidious's attempt to silence the witness fails because of the very boy Sidious is trying to reclaim, and Dooku, watching the young Jedi fight off assassins to protect him, understands with perfect clarity what has happened, that the boy's mercy has become the shield that keeps the truth alive, that Sidious's own prized weapon is now, all unknowing, the greatest protector of the secret that will destroy him. The old Sith almost laughs at the beauty of it. The apprentice's mercy has trapped the master, and Dooku, alive for another day, resolves to make that day count. While the great game plays out on Coruscant, it is worth widening our view to the whole galaxy, because the war did not pause while Dooku sat in his cell, and the fate of millions hung on threads that had nothing to do with the drama in the detention level, and one thread in particular would prove decisive. The Clone Wars, remember, were still raging. Sidious had engineered a galaxy-spanning conflict, and that conflict did not simply stop because its secret architect was in danger of exposure. Across 1,000 worlds, clone troopers and separatist droids still fought and died. Jedi generals still led armies, planets still burned, and the ordinary, staggering suffering of a galactic war continued its grim course, even as the hidden drama that might end it unfolded in the shadows. The story does not lose sight of this, because it matters. It is the stakes made concrete. The reason the race to expose Sidious is not merely a political thriller, but a matter of countless lives. Every day the war continues is a day more die, and so the hunt for Sidious is also, always, a race against the ongoing catastrophe of the war itself. But there is one aspect of the wider war that becomes absolutely central to the story, and it is the clones, specifically the terrible secret buried within them. Because Sidious's ultimate weapon against the Jedi was never really the Separatist armies. It was the clone army itself. In the galaxy, you know, the clones were engineered from the very beginning with a hidden control, the inhibitor chips, the buried command, Order 66, the built-in betrayal that turned the Jedi's own soldiers into their executioners in a single instant. The entire clone army was a trap, a knife the Jedi held to their own throats without knowing it, waiting only for Sidious to speak the word. And here, that buried threat becomes one of the most tense and important threads of the whole story, because as the Jedi close in on Sidious, and as Dooku reveals more and more of the scheme, the truth about the clones emerges. The existence of the chips, the hidden protocol, the command that could turn the Grand Army against its Jedi generals in an instant. It is a horrifying revelation. The Jedi learned that they have been leading into battle, trusting with their lives, an army that was designed from birth to murder them on command. That every clone trooper, however loyal, however brave, however genuinely bonded to the Jedi he served, carries in his skull a switch that Sidious can flip, that the war they have been fighting was, all along, a machine for putting the Jedi at the head of their own executioners. The race to neutralize this threat becomes a critical part of the endgame, because Sidious, when he is cornered, will surely try to trigger the protocol, to unleash Order 66, to turn the clones and destroy the Jedi in the single stroke that works so terribly well in the other galaxy, and the Jedi, warned by Dooku, must move to prevent it, to find a way to disable the chips, or to warn the clones, or to sever Sidious's ability to give the command before the Sith Master can play his ultimate card. It is a ticking clock beneath the whole climax, a buried bomb that both sides race to reach first. And this thread gives the story one of its most emotionally resonant elements, because it foregrounds the clones themselves, not as faceless soldiers, but as people. The tragedy of the clones in the galaxy, you know, is one of the saga's most quietly devastating notes. Men bred for war, who developed real loyalty and real affection for the Jedi they served, and who were then forced by the chips in their heads to murder those Jedi against their own will. The clones were victims too, enslaved not just to the war, but to a betrayal written into their very biology. And here, the story gives the clones something they never got in the other galaxy, a chance to be freed from that betrayal before it consumes them. Because if the Jedi can disable the chips, if they can free the clones from the buried command before Sidious triggers it, then the clones are not turned into executioners. They remain what they truly were beneath the programming. Loyal soldiers, brothers in arms, men who genuinely served alongside the Jedi, and who, freed from Sidious's control, would never have raised their weapons against them. The story imagines the clones as allies in the final confrontation, rather than as weapons turned against the Order. Clone troopers standing with their Jedi generals against Sidious, fighting freely and by choice for the first time, liberated from the invisible chains that would have made them murderers. It is a redemption of the clones' tragedy, a chance for the men Sidious enslaved to help bring him down, rather than to be forced to serve him one last terrible time. There is a particular poignancy in imagining specific clones in this thread. A Rex, a Cody, the clone commanders who in the other galaxy were forced by their chips to turn on Jedi they loved. Here, those same men, warned and freed, become the loyal soldiers they always wanted to be. Cody does not fire on Obi-Wan. Rex does not have to fight his own programming to spare Ahsoka. The clones who, in the other galaxy, carried the lifelong horror of what the chips made them do, are spared that horror here, allowed to be the brothers and the heroes they were beneath the programming, rather than the unwilling instruments of genocide. It is one of the quieter mercies of the new timeline, and it matters, because the clones deserve better than the fate Sidious wrote for them, and here, for once, they get it. The wider galaxy, then, is not just backdrop. It is stakes, and it is the clone army, and it is the buried threat of Order 66 that hangs over the entire climax, and the neutralizing of that threat, the freeing of the clones, the prevention of the great betrayal, is one of the essential victories of the story, the undoing of one of the saga's deepest tragedies, accomplished because a captured Sith Lord revealed the secret in time, and a transformed Order acted on it before the darkness could strike. The attempt to silence Dooku deserves to be told in full, because it is the story's first great action set piece, and its first real turning point, the moment where the abstract danger to the witness becomes blades in the dark, and where Anakin's changed path first bends the plot in a way Sidious cannot undo. It comes at night, in the deep hours when the detention level runs on a skeleton watch. Sidious has planned it with his usual care. The strike is dressed as a Separatist rescue operation. A team of infiltrators, ostensibly loyal to the Confederacy, come to free their captured leader before the Republic can put him on trial. That is the cover story, the narrative that will run in the news feeds afterward, the explanation that points away from the Chancellor. But the true mission is not rescue, it is assassination. The infiltrators are not there to free Dooku, they are there to kill him in the chaos and make it look like a rescue that went wrong, a firefight in which the prisoner, tragically, did not survive. Sidious does not want Dooku freed. A freed Dooku is as dangerous as a talking one. He wants Dooku dead, and he wants the death to look like anything other than what it is. The strike team is good. Sidious does not employ amateurs. They breach the facility's outer security with practiced efficiency, cutting through the defenses, moving toward the detention level with lethal purpose. Alarms begin to sound. The Skeleton Watch, a handful of temple guards and security personnel, moves to respond and is met with overwhelming force. For a few minutes, it looks as though the plan will work perfectly. The infiltrators will reach Dooku's cell, kill the Count in the confusion, and vanish or die in a way that seals the cover story. The witness will be silenced, the truth will die with him, and Sidious will have removed the single greatest threat to his entire scheme. But Anakin is there. He should not be. That is the thing Sidious could not have predicted, the variable outside the plan. Anakin has been drawn to the detention level in the deep hours, pulled by the Force, by Qui-Gon's subtle guidance, by his own restless need to understand the man whose life he spared, and who now fills so many of his thoughts. He has taken to visiting Dooku's cell at odd hours, unable to sleep, wrestling with the truths the old Sith has been feeding him and the suspicions they raise about the Chancellor. And so, on the night of the strike, when the alarms begin to wail, Anakin Skywalker is already inside the facility, close to the cell, exactly where Sidious's plan assumed no Jedi of consequence would be. What follows is a running battle through the corridors of the detention level, and it is Anakin at his most formidable, but a different formidable than the galaxy is used to. This is not the rage-fueled aggression that characterized Anakin's darker moments, the fighting from anger that was always a step toward the dark. This is Anakin fighting to protect, fighting with the clarity and control that Qui-Gon has been cultivating in him, fighting from the light rather than from the shadow. He moves through the strike team like a storm, but a disciplined storm, a purposeful one. He is not trying to slaughter, he is trying to stop the assassination, to reach the cell before the killers do, to protect the witness, whose survival he does not yet fully understand the importance of, but feels in the Force to be vital. The set piece is a showcase, blade work and force work woven together. Anakin fighting through corridors and around corners, deflecting blaster fire, disarming and disabling the infiltrators, racing against the clock toward Dooku's cell, and there is a terrible tension in it, because the strike team is racing too, and for long stretches, it is genuinely uncertain who will reach the Count first. The infiltrators know their target, they push toward the cell with lethal focus, willing to spend their own lives to complete the mission, and Anakin, alone against a team of professionals, must fight through them all before they can reach the handless, defenseless old man in the cell. He reaches the cell as the lead infiltrator does. The killer has a weapon leveled at Dooku, who stands in his cell watching death approach, with the cold composure of a man who has faced it before, but who, this time, does not want to die, because this time he has a purpose left to fulfill, a revenge to complete, a master to bring down. And in the instant before the killer fires, Anakin is there, and the blade of his lightsaber comes between Dooku and death for the second time. once on the ship when Anakin chose not to kill Dooku himself, now in the cell when Anakin chooses to save Dooku from another's blade. Twice now, Anakin Skywalker has stood between Count Dooku and the death that Sidious intended for him, and twice, in doing so, he has unknowingly struck a blow against his secret master's plan. The strike is defeated, the surviving infiltrators flee or fall, and in the aftermath, amid the smoke and the bodies and the wailing alarms, Anakin and Dooku look at each other through the bars of the cell. The young Jedi breathing hard, the old Sith regarding his savior with an expression that mingles astonishment and calculation and something almost like gratitude, and Dooku says something that lands in Anakin like a stone, because it names the thing the young Jedi has been circling without daring to speak. "You saved me again," Dooku says. "Do you understand what that means? Someone tried to have me killed tonight, not freed. Killed. A rescue would have taken me away. This was meant to silence me, and there is only one being in the galaxy who wants me silenced, only one who benefits from my death, only one with the reach to send professionals into the heart of a Jedi facility. Ask yourself who that is, young Skywalker. Ask yourself who fears what I know. And ask yourself why your dear friend the Chancellor, who was so eager for you to kill me on the ship, would want me dead now that I am talking. It is not proof, it is insinuation, the planting of a seed, but it is a seed that falls on ground Qui-Gon has already been preparing, and it takes root, because Anakin cannot unhear it. The logic is too clean. Who wanted Dooku dead? Who benefited? And why, indeed, was Palpatine so very eager for Anakin to kill this man on the ship? So eager in retrospect, so insistent in a way that a rescued captive should not have been. The assassination attempt, meant to silence the witness, instead does the opposite. It becomes the moment when Anakin first truly begins to suspect the man he has trusted his whole life. Sidious's own move against Dooku becomes the thing that turns his prized weapon against him, and the seed of doubt, planted in the smoke of the detention level, begins its slow and fatal growth toward the truth. The Jedi Council faces a problem that has no clean solution, and the way they wrestle with it reveals everything about why the Order was vulnerable in the first place. They have in Dooku a witness to the single most important fact in the galaxy, the identity of the Sith Master. But the witness is a captured enemy war criminal, a proven liar and manipulator, a Sith Lord whose every word is suspect, and the accusation he is building toward, that the Supreme Chancellor of the Republic is a Sith, is so enormous, so destabilizing, so seemingly impossible, that to act on it without ironclad proof would be to invite catastrophe. If the Jedi move against Palpatine on the word of Dooku alone and are wrong, they destroy themselves and the Republic's faith in the Order. If they move and are right but cannot prove it, Sidious escapes and turns the failed accusation into the pretext to destroy them. The Council is being handed a truth that they cannot afford to believe without proof, and cannot afford to ignore if it is real. This is the trap Sidious built, and it is beautiful in its cruelty. He made himself the most trusted man in the galaxy precisely so that no accusation could touch him. He is the beloved wartime Chancellor, the steady hand that guided the Republic through its darkest years, the humble public servant who keeps being granted more power only because he keeps being begged to take it. To accuse him is to sound insane. The Jedi know this, and so even as Dooku's revelations mount, even as the pieces fit together with terrible coherence, the Council hesitates, because they understand that suspicion is not proof, and that against an enemy this well-defended, a premature strike is a fatal one. The debates within the Council are among the most important in the story, because they are the debates the Order failed to have in the galaxy, you know. There, the Jedi came to suspect Palpatine only at the very end, only when it was far too late, only when Sidious had already engineered their destruction. Here, they have Dooku, and Dooku forces the question years, no months, but decisive months, earlier, while there is still time to act, and the Council must decide what to do with the suspicion they cannot prove against an enemy they cannot afford to accuse. Mace Windu, characteristically, leans toward action. He has never trusted Palpatine. He has felt the shroud of the dark side growing thicker around the Chancellor's office for years, felt the wrongness that the others were slower to sense. Dooku's revelations confirm what Mace has long suspected in his bones, and Mace is not a man to sit on a confirmed threat. If the Chancellor is the Sith Lord, Mace argues, then every day of delay is a day the enemy uses to prepare, and the Order must move to confirm the truth and act on it before Sidious can spring whatever trap he has surely laid. Yoda counsels patience, but not the blind patience that doomed the Order before. He too believes Dooku, or believes enough to be gravely afraid, but Yoda understands the depth of the trap better than any of them, and he knows that to move against Sidious without proof and without preparation is to play the game on the enemy's terms. Sidious wants the Jedi to strike prematurely, to expose themselves, to give him the pretext. The Order must instead build its case, gather its proof, and move only when the strike cannot fail, and Yoda understands something else, something that weighs on him greatly, that the Order's own weaknesses, its entanglement in the war, its distance from the Force, its blindness, are the very things Sidious has exploited, and that the hunt for the Sith Master must be also a reckoning with how the Order allowed itself to be so thoroughly deceived. And then there is the question of Anakin, which sits over the whole debate like a shadow, because the Council knows, some of them at least, how close Anakin is to the Chancellor. They know Palpatine has cultivated the boy for years, singled him out, drawn him near, and now, with the Chancellor under suspicion, that closeness becomes a terrible liability and a terrible opportunity at once. Anakin is the Order's best potential source of insight into Palpatine. No one is nearer to the Chancellor, no one better placed to observe him. But Anakin is also the one most likely to reject the suspicion, most emotionally bound to the man, most vulnerable to being used by Sidious against the Order. Can Anakin be trusted with the truth? Can he be told that his mentor is the enemy? Or would telling him drive him straight to Palpatine's side, confirming to Sidious exactly how close the Jedi are? The Council is divided, and the division is the old fatal one, the mistrust of Anakin, the tendency to hold him at arm's length, to see him as a risk rather than an asset. In the galaxy, you know, this mistrust was one of the things that drove Anakin toward Palpatine. The Council's coldness made the Chancellor's warmth all the more seductive, and here, that same dynamic threatens to repeat. If the Council decides Anakin cannot be trusted, if they freeze him out of the hunt for the Sith, they risk driving him back toward the very man they suspect, and losing their best chance to reach Sidious through the one person he has let closest. It is Obi-Wan who argues most powerfully for trusting Anakin, and it is here that Obi-Wan's role in the new story takes shape. Obi-Wan knows Anakin better than anyone living. He has seen the change in his former apprentice since the Invisible Hand, the new thoughtfulness, the questions, the strange new steadiness. He does not know about Qui-Gon, not yet, but he senses that something has shifted in Anakin, something good. And Obi-Wan argues that the Order's salvation may lie precisely in trusting Anakin now, in bringing him in rather than freezing him out, and giving the boy the truth and the chance to choose the light with full knowledge, rather than being managed and mistrusted into the dark. It is the argument the Order should have made in the other timeline, and never did. And whether the Council listens, whether they overcome their old habits of mistrust, and embrace Anakin as an ally in the hunt, becomes one of the pivotal questions of the entire story, because everything depends on it. If the Order repeats its old mistake, if it mistrusts Anakin and drives him toward Palpatine, then even with Dooku's revelations, the hunt may fail and the dark may triumph. But if the Order learns, if it does the thing it failed to do before, and trusts the compassionate, powerful, wounded young man at its heart, then Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, positioned closer to the Sith Master than any Jedi has ever been, armed with the truth, and guided by the ghost of the one Master who always believed in him, becomes the perfect instrument of the darkness's undoing. The Council holds Anakin's fate, and the galaxy's, in how it chooses to see him. And this time, with Qui-Gon working from beyond the veil and Obi-Wan pleading from within the chamber, there is a real chance the Order chooses right. Among the Jedi Council, no one embodies the difficulty of the situation more sharply than Mace Windu, and his arc through the story is one of its most important, because Mace represents the road the Order might have taken, and the wisdom it must find instead. Mace Windu is, in many ways, the Jedi most vindicated by Dooku's revelations. For years, Mace distrusted Palpatine, sensed the growing shroud of the dark side around the Chancellor's office, felt the wrongness that the more trusting members of the Council were slower to perceive. In the galaxy, you know, it was Mace who finally moved against Palpatine, who led the arrest party to the Chancellor's office, who came within a hair's breadth of ending the Sith threat before Anakin's intervention doomed them all. Mace was right, and he was right early, and his tragedy in the other galaxy was that his rightness came too late and was undone at the final moment. Here, Dooku's revelations confirm everything Mace suspected, and the confirmation puts Mace in a difficult and revealing position, because Mace's instinct, upon confirmation, is to act decisively, immediately, forcefully. If the Chancellor is the Sith Lord, then the Chancellor must be stopped, and Mace is not a man to hesitate over a confirmed threat. His whole temperament, his whole philosophy of the Jedi as guardians, who must sometimes act with hard decisiveness, pushes him toward the swift strike. And in the galaxy, it was exactly this instinct, right in its perception, but flawed in its execution, that led to the disaster in the Chancellor's office, where Mace's decisive strike created the very crisis that damned Anakin. The story uses Mace to explore a crucial question. Is the answer to Sidious the hard decisiveness that Mace represents, or is it something else? Because Mace's approach has a shadow side, and the story is honest about it. Mace's readiness to act, his willingness to do what must be done, his hard pragmatism, these can shade into exactly the kind of ruthlessness that the dark side feeds on. In the galaxy, when Mace stood over a defeated Palpatine and prepared to kill him, a defeated enemy, disarmed, at his mercy, he was, in that moment, stepping toward the same line that Anakin stepped over with Dooku. Mace's intention was righteous, but the act was an execution, and it was that moral ambiguity, that willingness to kill a helpless enemy, that Palpatine exploited to turn Anakin. The parallel is exact and deliberate. Both Mace and Anakin faced a defeated enemy and the choice of whether to kill him, and the story's whole premise turns on Anakin choosing mercy where, in the other galaxy, both he and Mace chose death. And so Mace's arc in this story is a reckoning with his own approach. He must confront the possibility that his hard decisiveness, however well-intentioned, is not the pure light he believes it to be, that the Jedi cannot defeat the darkness by matching its ruthlessness, that the answer to Sidious is not a swifter, harder strike, but something wiser. This is a difficult journey for Mace, because his whole identity is built on being the one willing to do what must be done. The strong hand, the decisive warrior. To question that is to question himself at the deepest level. The catalyst for Mace's growth is, of all things, Anakin's mercy, because Mace watches what Anakin's mercy accomplishes. He sees that sparing Dooku, the very act Mace himself might have called weakness, sentiment, a dangerous failure to eliminate a threat, is the thing that gives the Order the witness that cracks Sidious's scheme. He sees that Anakin's refusal to kill a helpless enemy, far from being the weakness Mace's philosophy would suggest, is the strength that saves the galaxy, and Mace, who is wise beneath his hardness, cannot ignore the lesson. The mercy worked. The mercy accomplished what all of Mace's decisiveness never could, and Mace must sit with the possibility that he has been wrong about something fundamental, that the Jedi way is not in the end about the willingness to do hard things, but about the wisdom to choose the light even when the dark is more efficient. This does not mean Mace becomes passive, or that the story dismisses his strengths, his clarity, his courage, his willingness to see threats that others deny. These remain vital, and the Order needs them. When the time comes to confront Sidious, Mace is at the forefront, and his strength is essential, but he confronts Sidious as a changed man, no longer the hard executioner who would kill a defeated enemy and thereby step toward the darkness, but a Jedi who has learned, from a young man he once distrusted, that the light must be served with wisdom as well as strength. Mace's growth is the Council's growth in miniature, the movement from the hard, brittle, rule-bound Order that Sidious exploited toward a wiser, more compassionate, more truly light-aligned Order that can actually defeat him. And there is a beautiful reconciliation in Mace's arc, because Mace and Anakin, in the galaxy never trusted each other. Mace saw Anakin as dangerous, unpredictable, too emotional, not to be relied upon, and Anakin felt that distrust keenly, and it was part of what drove him toward Palpatine's welcoming warmth. Their mutual distrust was one of the small tragedies that fed the larger one. Here, that distrust is healed, and it is healed through the very thing Mace once distrusted about Anakin. Mace comes to see that Anakin's emotion, his compassion, his capacity for mercy, the very qualities Mace once viewed as weaknesses and dangers, are in fact Anakin's greatest strengths, the things that save the galaxy. And Anakin comes to see that Mace's hardness was never cruelty, but a kind of love, a fierce protective devotion to the Order and the Republic. The two men who never understood each other come, through the crucible of the hunt for Sidious, to a genuine mutual respect, Mace acknowledging the strength in Anakin's mercy, Anakin acknowledging the devotion beneath Mace's hardness. It is another of the small healings that the new timeline makes possible, another relationship that tragedy destroyed in one galaxy and grace restores in this one. The hardest journey in the entire story belongs to Anakin, and it is not a journey of lightsabers or battles, but of belief. The slow, agonizing process of coming to accept a truth that shatters the foundation of his life. Because to Anakin, Palpatine is not a suspect. Palpatine is family. For 13 years, the Chancellor has been the one constant source of understanding and validation in Anakin's life. When the Council doubted him, Palpatine believed in him. When the Jedi held him at arm's length, Palpatine drew him close. When Anakin's fears and angers and attachments made him feel like a failure by the cold standards of the Order, Palpatine told him those very feelings were signs of his greatness. The Chancellor has been mentor, confidant, father figure, friend. To suspect him is not merely to entertain a political theory, it is to consider that the person Anakin trusts most in all the galaxy has been lying to him, using him, manipulating him from the very beginning. It is to face the possibility that the one relationship that made Anakin feel understood was a fraud built to destroy him. Anakin resists this with everything in him, and his resistance is the most human thing about him. We have all, at some point, refused to see a truth about someone we love because seeing it would cost too much. Anakin does exactly that. When the suspicions first reach him, through Obi-Wan carefully, through the fragments Dooku lets slip, through Qui-Gon's gentle warnings, he rejects them angrily. It is Separatist propaganda. It is Dooku's lie, the desperate slander of a captured enemy. It is the Council's paranoia, their long-standing distrust of the Chancellor who has outmaneuvered them politically for years. Anakin has 100 reasons to disbelieve, and he clings to all of them because the alternative is unbearable. Writing so you're here for the next one. Until then, may the Force be with you, always. But the truth does not go away simply because Anakin refuses to see it. And here Qui-Gon's role becomes essential, because Qui-Gon does not try to force the truth on Anakin. He is far wiser than that. He knows that a truth forced is a truth rejected, that if he simply declares Palpatine the enemy, Anakin's loyalty will slam shut like a door. Instead, Qui-Gon does what a great teacher does. He helps Anakin learn to see for himself. He teaches Anakin to trust the Force, to feel rather than to rationalize, to notice what his own senses have been telling him all along beneath the noise of his loyalty, because the truth is that some part of Anakin has always sensed something in Palpatine, a coldness beneath the warmth, a wrongness he could never name, a shadow at the edge of the Chancellor's presence that Anakin has spent years explaining away. Qui-Gon does not tell Anakin what to think. He teaches him to stop not thinking, to stop suppressing what he has always half known, and slowly, painfully, Anakin begins to see. It happens in moments. A conversation with Palpatine where, for the first time, Anakin really listens, really feels the Chancellor with the Force instead of with his loyalty, and catches something he cannot unfeel, a flicker of cold hunger beneath the fatherly warmth, a moment where Palpatine, working to reclaim him, pushes a little too hard on the fear of Padme's death, and Anakin notices suddenly how the Chancellor always seems to steer him toward that fear, always seems to feed it rather than soothe it, always seems to offer the same dark solution. 100 small things that Anakin has ignored for years begin, under Qui-Gon's guidance, to cohere into a pattern, and the pattern is monstrous, and Anakin cannot look away from it any longer. The moment Anakin truly begins to believe is one of the emotional peaks of the story, and it is devastating precisely because it is not a moment of anger, but of grief. When the truth finally breaks through, when Anakin can no longer deny that the man he loved and trusted is the Sith Lord who has been orchestrating the galaxy's suffering, who has been manipulating Anakin himself from the very beginning, who arranged the deaths and the war, and perhaps even engineered the circumstances of Anakin's mother's death and Padme's danger, the young Jedi is not filled with rage. He is filled with a grief so profound it nearly breaks him, because he has lost his father, not to death, to revelation. The man he loved never existed. The warmth was a lie. The understanding was a manipulation. The whole relationship was a spider patiently wrapping its prey. Everything Anakin thought he had in Palpatine, he never had. And the loss of that, the loss of the false father, who was for 13 years the emotional center of Anakin's life, is a wound as deep as any death. And this is the moment of maximum danger. And the story knows it, because in the galaxy, you know, a moment of this kind of grief and betrayal is exactly what would send Anakin spiraling toward the dark. Grief becomes anger, anger becomes hatred, and a betrayed Anakin, feeling that everything was a lie, could easily turn that shattering into rage and vengeance, and the very fall the whole story has been working to prevent. The revelation about Palpatine is a knife that cuts both ways. It could free Anakin or destroy him, depending entirely on how he bears it. And here is where everything the story has built pays off, because Anakin does not bear it alone. In the galaxy, you know, Anakin faced his crises alone, held at arm's length by the Council, unable to confide in Obi-Wan, isolated with only Palpatine to turn to, and Palpatine used that isolation to pull him down. Here, Anakin is not isolated. He has Qui-Gon guiding him through the grief, teaching him that the pain of betrayal does not have to become the poison of hatred, that a Jedi can be shattered and still choose the light. He has Obi-Wan, who, once Anakin finally opens up to him, becomes again the brother Anakin needs, present and steady and loving through the crisis. And he has, in the mercy he showed on the ship, a proof already written into his own soul that he can choose the light when the dark is easier. Anakin has been practicing, without knowing it, for exactly this moment. The mercy toward Dooku was the rehearsal. The truth about Palpatine is the performance, and so Anakin, faced with the most shattering betrayal of his life, does the thing that in the other galaxy he could not do. He grieves, fully, honestly, without suppressing it into rage. He lets himself feel the loss of the father who never was, and then, held by Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, and by the fragile new strength he has been building since the invisible hand, he chooses. Not vengeance, not the dark, but justice. The determination to stop the man who did this, to end the darkness that has been feeding on the galaxy and on Anakin himself, to become not Sidious's weapon, but Sidious's undoing. The betrayal that would have broken him instead forges him. And Anakin Skywalker, grieving and clear-eyed and finally truly free of the false father's grip, turns to face the Sith Master, not as a fallen apprentice, but as the chosen one he was always prophesied to be. There is a figure who has been moving through the edges of this story, and who deserves to step into the center of it, because in the galaxy, you know she was tragically sidelined in the final act, reduced to a grieving casualty of Anakin's fall. And here she becomes something far greater. Padme Amidala. Remember who Padme is. Not merely Anakin's secret wife, not merely the woman whose death haunted his nightmares. She is one of the most capable political figures in the galaxy, a former queen, a sitting senator, a leader of extraordinary intelligence and courage and moral clarity. In the galaxy, you know, her gifts were wasted by the tragedy. She saw the Republic sliding toward dictatorship. She tried to stop it. She gave her famous warning about liberty dying to thunderous applause. And then she was swept aside by Anakin's fall, dying of a broken heart while the galaxy she fought for became the empire she feared. Her political heroism came to nothing, drowned by the personal tragedy. Here, it is different. Here, Padme's political gifts become essential to the salvation of the galaxy, because the hunt for Sidious is not only a matter of Jedi and Sith and lightsabers, it is a matter of politics, of exposing the Chancellor, of countering his narrative, of navigating the treacherous currents of a Senate that Sidious has spent years corrupting. And in that political dimension, Padme is exactly the ally the Jedi need and could not otherwise have, because the Jedi are not politicians. That was always one of their weaknesses, their discomfort with the political sphere, their tendency to see politics as beneath them or beyond them, their failure to grasp how thoroughly Sidious was defeating them not on the battlefield, but in the Senate. When Sidious launches his counter-narrative, when he accuses the Jedi of plotting a coup and turns the machinery of politics against them, the Jedi are ill-equipped to fight back in that arena. They can wield lightsabers, they cannot easily wield the Senate, and that is precisely where Padme comes in. Padme becomes the political counter to Sidious's political attack. She knows the Senate. She knows how narratives are built and countered, how coalitions are formed, how the truth can be made to land in a chamber full of frightened and self-interested politicians. When Sidious moves to paint the Jedi as conspirators, it is Padme who organizes the resistance to that framing, who rallies the senators of conscience, who gives the Jedi's truth a political voice, who fights Sidious on the ground where he is strongest and the Jedi are weakest. She is, in the political dimension of the hunt, what Anakin is in the personal dimension, and Dooku is in the intelligence dimension, an essential piece without which Sidious would win. And there is something deeply satisfying about this, because it redeems Padme's arc from the tragic waste of the other galaxy. There, her warnings went unheeded, and her gifts came to nothing. Here, her warnings are heard, her gifts are decisive, and the liberty she feared would die is instead preserved, in part because of her. The woman who watched democracy die to applause in one galaxy becomes, in this one of the people who saves it. Her heroism is not drowned by tragedy, it is fulfilled. The Padme thread also deepens the emotional core of Anakin's story, because Padme is not merely a political ally, but the center of Anakin's heart, and the two dimensions intertwine. As Anakin comes to grips with the truth about Palpatine, as he grieves the false father and turns against the Sith Master, Padme is his anchor. She is the one he can confide in, the one whose love is real, where Palpatine's was a manipulation, the one who helps him hold the shattering truth without breaking. In the galaxy, you know, Anakin hid his fears from Padme, could not confide the truth of his nightmares or his temptations, and that isolation helped drive him to Palpatine. Here, the marriage is a source of strength rather than a secret weakness. Anakin and Padme facing the crisis together, her clarity steadying his turmoil, his love giving her the personal stakes that fuel her political courage, and crucially, Padme's role in the hunt changes the nature of Anakin's fear for her. In the other galaxy, Padme was passive in Anakin's mind, a precious thing to be protected, an object of his desperate need to control and save, and that framing was part of what drove him to the dark. Here, Padme is an active hero in her own right, fighting alongside him, taking her own risks, shaping the outcome, and that changes how Anakin loves her. He cannot see her merely as something fragile to be protected when she is standing beside him facing down the Sith Master in the Senate. He must see her as a partner, a fellow hero, an equal, and that reframing is part of how Anakin learns to love without the grasping fear that damned him. Padme, by being a hero rather than a victim, helps free Anakin from the very fear that his need to protect her once created. There is a danger in the Padme thread too, and the story uses it for tension, because Sidious knows what Padme is to Anakin, and Sidious is not above using her, threatening her, targeting her, trying to turn Anakin's love for her into the lever it was in the other galaxy. In the endgame, as Sidious grows desperate, the danger to Padme becomes real, and Anakin's old fear threatens to reawaken. There must be a moment, where Padme is in genuine peril, where Anakin's nightmares seem about to come true, where the old terror rises up and whispers that only the dark side's power can save her. It is the ultimate test, the fear made flesh, and Anakin passes it, not by finding dark power to save her, but by trusting, by refusing the fear, by choosing the light even with the person he loves most in danger. And Padme, being who she is not merely saved, but participates in her own salvation, fighting alongside Anakin rather than waiting to be rescued. The nightmare that defined Anakin's fall is confronted directly and answered and defeated, and Padme lives, not as a passive miracle, but as a hero who helped win her own survival and the galaxy's. There is a conversation that has to happen in this story, and it is one that never truly happened in the galaxy, you know, and its absence there was one of the quiet tragedies that made the larger one possible. It is the conversation where Anakin finally fully opens up to Obi-Wan. Think about the relationship between these two men, and about the wall that always stood in it. Obi-Wan and Anakin loved each other. That was never in doubt. They were brothers, forged in a decade of war and training and shared danger, bound by a loyalty that ran to the bone. But there was always a distance too, a set of things unsaid. Anakin never told Obi-Wan about his marriage to Padme. He never told him about the slaughter of the Tusken Raiders. He never confided the depth of his nightmares, the desperation of his fear, the temptations that Palpatine was cultivating in him. He carried all of it alone, or shared it only with Palpatine, because he did not believe Obi-Wan would understand. Feared Obi-Wan's judgment, the Council's judgment, the disappointment of the Order that already seemed to distrust him, and that isolation, that vast reservoir of unshared pain, was the space in which Palpatine worked. The false father filled the silence that Anakin kept from the true brother. Here, that silence breaks, and it breaks because of everything that has happened since the ship. The mercy, the communion with Qui-Gon, the growing suspicion about Palpatine, the assassination attempt, the slow, terrible dawning of the truth. Anakin reaches a point where he cannot carry it alone any longer, where the weight of what he is beginning to understand about the Chancellor is too great to bear in isolation. And so, for the first time in their long friendship, he goes to Obi-Wan and tells him everything. It is a remarkable scene, and the story gives it room. Anakin tells Obi-Wan about the voice on the ship, about Qui-Gon, about the mercy, about the communion that has been guiding guiding him since. He tells him about the nightmares, the fear for Padme, the desperation he has been hiding, and haltingly, painfully, he tells him about Palpatine, about the growing certainty that the man he trusted most is the Sith Lord they have been hunting, and about the grief and horror of that dawning truth. He lays it all bare, the whole hidden architecture of his inner life, the fears and the temptations, and the terrible suspicion to the brother he never let in, and Obi-Wan receives it. That is the crucial thing, the thing that changes everything. In the galaxy, you know, Anakin feared that if he opened up, he would be judged, rejected, condemned. Here, he learns that his fear was wrong, that Obi-Wan, for all his adherence to the Order's ways, loves Anakin more than he loves the rules, and meets his confession not with judgment but with compassion. Obi-Wan does not recoil at the marriage, or the fear, or the temptations. He grieves with Anakin over the betrayal of Palpatine. He studies him. He becomes, in that moment, exactly the brother Anakin always needed and never quite let himself have. Present, loving, unshaken by the darkness Anakin reveals. There is something profoundly healing in this for both of them. For Anakin, it is the discovery that he was never as alone as he believed, that the isolation Palpatine exploited was partly self-imposed, that the brother he feared to trust was trustworthy all along. For Obi-Wan, it is the anguish of realizing how much Anakin carried alone, how much he might have helped if only Anakin had let him, how close he came to losing his brother to a darkness he never saw, mixed with the fierce joy of being let in at last, of finally being the brother Anakin needed. The conversation is a reckoning with all the years of things unsaid, and it clears the air between them in a way that transforms their bond from the strained, incomplete thing it was into something whole. And it matters enormously for what comes next, because a united Anakin and Obi-Wan are far stronger than the isolated Anakin of the other galaxy ever was. In the confrontation with Sidious, in the resistance to his manipulations, in the whole endgame of the hunt, Anakin does not stand alone. He stands with Obi-Wan beside him, the brother who knows everything now, who holds nothing against him, who will fight at his side and steady him when Sidious reaches for his fears. The isolation that doomed Anakin in one galaxy is replaced, in this one, by a brotherhood made whole. And that brotherhood becomes one of the shields that protects Anakin from the fall, one of the bonds that holds him to the light when the dark comes reaching. There is a moment in this conversation, small but resonant, that captures the whole meaning of it. Anakin, having confessed everything, asks Obi-Wan, with the vulnerability of a man who has feared judgment his whole life, whether Obi-Wan is disappointed in him, whether, knowing everything now, the marriage and the fear and the temptations and how close he came to the dark, Obi-Wan thinks less of him, and Obi-Wan tells him the truth, that he is not disappointed, that he is proud of the man who heard a voice urging him to murder and chose mercy instead, proud of the man who is facing the most shattering betrayal of his life and choosing the light through it, proud of the brother who finally trusted him enough to let him in. It is a thing Anakin has waited his whole life to hear from the Order that raised him and never quite did, and hearing it from Obi-Wan, his brother, his fellow soldier, the man who trained him, heals something in Anakin that 13 years of Palpatine's false validation never could. Because Palpatine's validation was a tool, a manipulation, a thing given to bind Anakin closer to the dark. Obi-Wan's is real, offered freely, born of genuine love, and the difference between the two, between the false father's poisoned flattery and the true brother's honest pride, is, in the end, one more part of what saves Anakin Skywalker from the fall. Meanwhile, in his cell, Dooku has been waiting for exactly the right moment, and he senses that it has come. The old Sith has played his long game with exquisite patience. He has doled out revelations, made himself indispensable, survived his master's attempts to silence him, and built in the minds of the Jedi a growing certainty that the Chancellor is the enemy, but he has held back the final proof because he understands, better than the Jedi do, that suspicion is not enough. Sidious has made himself unaccusable. The word of a captured war criminal, however credible, will never be enough to move against the beloved Chancellor. What is needed is proof. Hard, undeniable, damning proof. And Dooku, it turns out, has been holding exactly that in reserve, because Dooku was Sidious's apprentice for years, and an apprentice learns things. Dooku knows the mechanisms of the scheme, the secret accounts, the hidden communications, the proxies and cutouts through which Sidious controlled both sides of the war. He knows where the bodies are buried, metaphorically and perhaps literally. He knows the location of evidence that could tie the Chancellor irrefutably to the Sith, to the Separatists, to the manufacturers manufacturing of the entire war. He has kept this knowledge as his final card, his ultimate leverage, the one thing that guarantees the Jedi need him alive. And now, sensing that the moment has come, that the Jedi are ready to believe, that Anakin has turned, that the hunt has reached its critical mass, Dooku prepares to play it. But Dooku does nothing for free, and the negotiation over his final revelation is one of the most morally complex passages in the story, because Dooku is not a redeemed man. He is a Sith Lord playing the endgame of his own survival and revenge, and he intends to extract a price for the proof he holds. He wants his life, guaranteed. He wants, perhaps, more than his life. Freedom, or power, or some role in the galaxy that will emerge after Sidious falls. He is, even now, even in chains, scheming for his own advantage, and the Jedi know it, and they must decide how much they are willing to give a Sith Lord in exchange for the salvation of the galaxy. It is a deal with the devil, and they know it is a deal with the devil, and they may have no choice but to make it. This is where the story's moral thriller sharpens to a point. The Jedi need Dooku's proof to destroy Sidious, but dealing with Dooku means bargaining with evil, means potentially unleashing one Sith to destroy another, means the queasy compromise of using the darkness against itself. Some on the council recoil from it. Mace Windu, in particular, distrusts the entire arrangement. The idea of trusting Dooku, of bargaining with him, of building the case against Sidious on the word, and the evidence of another Sith Lord, who is surely pursuing his own agenda, and Mace is right to distrust it. Dooku is pursuing his own agenda. The question is whether the Jedi can use Dooku's agenda to serve the light without being used by it in turn. Anakin's role here is crucial and strange, because Anakin has a bond with Dooku now, the bond of the man who spared his life. Dooku has never forgotten that mercy. It is the hinge on which his own survival turned, and it has created between the old Sith and the young Jedi something that is not friendship, exactly, but is not nothing either. A strange mutual understanding. Dooku respects Anakin in a way he respects almost no one, because Anakin did the one thing Dooku did not expect. He chose mercy over power, and in doing so, he proved himself both stronger and freer than Dooku ever was. And Anakin, for his part, understands Dooku in a way the other Jedi cannot, because Anakin knows what it is to be manipulated by Sidious, to be used and shaped and nearly discarded. They are, in a sense, both Sidious's victims, the apprentice discarded, and the apprentice that almost was, and that shared wound gives them a channel of communication that becomes vital to the hunt. It is largely through Anakin that the deal with Dooku is brokered. Anakin, who can speak to Dooku not as a jailer to a prisoner, but as one of Sidious's victims to another, becomes the bridge between the Order and its captive Sith, and through that bridge, the proof begins to flow. Dooku revealing, piece by piece, the location and nature of the evidence that will damn Sidious, the Jedi verifying it, the case against the Chancellor building at last, from suspicion into certainty. But even as the proof comes together, the danger mounts, because Sidious is not blind. He can feel the net closing. He does not know exactly what Dooku has given the Jedi, but he can sense the shift, the new confidence in the Order, the change in Anakin, the growing certainty in the way the Jedi move around him. Sidious has always been able to feel the currents of the Force, and the currents now are running against him for the first time in his life. And a Sith Master who feels the net closing does not wait to be caught. He accelerates. He begins to move toward his own endgame. The contingency he has surely prepared for exactly this scenario. The trap within the trap. The way out that a being this careful always keeps in reserve. The race reaches its critical phase. The Jedi, armed at last with Dooku's proof, and Anakin's turned loyalty, prepare to move against the Chancellor, to expose him, to arrest him, to end the thousand-year Sith scheme in a single decisive stroke. And Sidious, feeling them come, prepares his response. Everything the two sides have been building toward converges. And the question that hangs over it all is the question that has hung over the story since the mercy on the ship. Whether the light, striking first for once, armed with truth and proof, and a chosen one who did not fall, can finally do the thing the Jedi failed to do in the galaxy, you know? Catch the Sith Master before he springs his trap, and end the darkness before it can consume everything. The hunt is almost over. What remains is the confrontation. And Sidious, cornered at last, is about to show the galaxy exactly how dangerous dangerous a Sith Lord becomes when everything he has built for a lifetime is finally truly threatened. Sidious does not go quietly, and the way he fights back is a masterclass in why he was, for 1,000 years of Sith scheming, the one who finally won. The moment Sidious becomes certain that the Jedi are moving against him, that they have proof that Anakin has turned, that the net is truly closing, he springs the trap he has kept in reserve for exactly this contingency, because a being like Sidious never plans for only one outcome. He has always known that his scheme might one day be discovered, and he has prepared, across years, a way to turn even his own exposure into a weapon, and now he unleashes it. His first move is to reframe everything. Sidious has spent years making the Jedi look dangerous to the Republic, accumulating, in the public mind and in the machinery of government, the raw materials of a narrative in which the Jedi are a threat to democracy, an unaccountable power, a potential source of tyranny. In the galaxy you know, he deployed this narrative after the fact to justify the Order's destruction. Here, he deploys it preemptively, the instant he feels the Jedi coming for him. He goes to the Senate, to the public, to the vast apparatus of his influence, and he tells a story that the Jedi, in league with the captured traitor Dooku, are plotting to seize control of the Republic, that they have fabricated evidence against the beloved Chancellor, that they intend a coup. He gets his accusation in first, and it is a good one, and it lands, because Sidious has spent 13 years preparing the ground for exactly this seed. Suddenly the hunt is inverted. The Jedi, who thought they were closing in on the Sith Master, find themselves accused of being the conspirators. The proof they have assembled against the Chancellor is recast in Sidious's counter-narrative as the very fabrication that proves their treachery. Their alliance with Dooku, their bargain with the captured Sith Lord, becomes, in Sidious's telling, evidence that they are in league with the enemy. Everything the Jedi have done to build their case, Sidious turns against them. It is the political equivalent of a lightsaber riposte, and it very nearly works, because the galaxy loves Palpatine and distrusts the secretive Jedi, and a frightened people at war will believe the man who has kept them safe over the robed mystics who suddenly cry conspiracy, and Sidious does not stop at politics. He moves on every front at once, with the terrible simultaneity that has always been his signature. He activates his hidden assets. He has, buried in the clone army, the same dark contingency he used in the galaxy you know. The biochip protocol, the built-in command that can turn the entire Grand Army of the Republic against the Jedi in an instant. He has proxies and agents throughout the government and the military, positioned over years, ready to move, and he has, above all, himself, Darth Sidious, one of the most powerful Sith Lords who ever lived, no longer hiding, ready at last to unleash the full fury of the dark side that he has concealed beneath the mask of the mild Chancellor for so long. The story reaches its crisis point here, and it is a genuine crisis. Because for a terrible span, it looks as though Sidious might win after all, might turn his own exposure into the very catastrophe he always intended, might use the Jedi's strike against him as the pretext to destroy them, exactly as he did before. The clone army is a knife at the Order's throat, the Senate is turning against them, the public believes the Chancellor, and Sidious, cornered but brilliant, is executing a counterstrike that threatens to convert his moment of greatest danger into his moment of final triumph. But there are differences this time, and the differences are everything. The first difference is Dooku. In the galaxy, you know, Sidious controlled the narrative absolutely because there was no one to contradict him. No witness, no insider, no one who could speak the truth of the scheme from within. Here, there is Dooku, alive, in Jedi custody, with intimate knowledge of every mechanism of Sidious's power, and Dooku, when Sidious makes his move, becomes the counter to it, because Dooku can explain the biochip protocol before it is triggered. Dooku can expose the proxies, and the hidden accounts, and the machinery of control. Dooku can testify, with the specific damning detail that only an insider possesses, to exactly how Sidious built and operated his scheme. The witness Sidious failed to silence becomes, at the critical moment, the thing that breaks his counter-narrative. Every lie Sidious tells, Dooku can answer with a truth, and the truths are specific and verifiable in a way the lies are not. The second difference is Anakin. In the galaxy you know, Anakin was Sidious's greatest weapon at exactly this moment. The fallen apprentice, newly christened Vader, unleashed against the Jedi. Here, Anakin is Sidious's greatest weakness, because Sidious's entire counterstrike depends on the Jedi being isolated, distrusted, alone against the weight of the Republic. And Anakin Skywalker is the most beloved Jedi in the galaxy, the hero with no fear, the face of the war effort, the young champion the public adores. When Anakin stands with the Order, when Anakin publicly and unequivocally declares that the Chancellor is the Sith Lord, that he himself was manipulated for years, that the proof is real, it shatters Sidious's narrative in a way nothing else could. The people might disbelieve the secretive council. They cannot so easily disbelieve Anakin Skywalker. The weapon Sidious spent 13 years forging turns in his hand at the decisive moment and cuts him. And the third difference is Qui-Gon and the Force itself, because the light in this galaxy is not blind and clouded the way it was before. Qui-Gon, from beyond the veil, has been clearing the fog, helping the Jedi see, helping Anakin see, thinning the shroud of the dark side that let Sidious hide for so long. The Order moves against Sidious not in the confused, reactive, too-late way it did before, but with clarity and preparation, and the guidance of a Jedi who can see across the veil. The advantage of surprise, which was always Sidious's, has for the first time shifted to the light, and so the counterstrike, terrifying as it is, does not achieve what Sidious's counterstrike achieved before. The clone army is not turned, because Dooku's warning lets the Jedi and their allies move to prevent the biochip protocol from being triggered cleanly. The Senate is not wholly convinced, because Anakin and Dooku together puncture the narrative. The Jedi are not isolated and destroyed, because for once they saw it coming. Sidious throws everything he has into the moment of his exposure, and for the first time in his long life, everything is not enough. It comes down, as it always must, to a confrontation. Sidious, his political counterstrike faltering, his witness turned against him, his weapon Anakin lost to the light, his hidden assets exposed before they could be fully deployed, is forced at last out of the shadows and into the open. The mask of the Chancellor falls away, and Darth Sidious, Dark Lord of the Sith, the spider who spun the whole web, stands revealed at last, cornered, exposed, and more dangerous than he has ever been, because a Sith Lord with nothing left to lose, and a lifetime of concealed power is the most lethal thing in the galaxy. The hunt is over. The reckoning begins. The final confrontation with Sidious deserves to be seen in full, moment by moment, because it is the climax the entire story has been building toward, and because the way it unfolds is the ultimate expression of everything the story means. When Sidious is forced at last into the open, his political counterstrike faltering, his witness turned against him, his weapon Anakin lost, his hidden assets exposed, he does the thing a cornered Sith Lord does. He stops hiding. The mask of Palpatine, worn for so many years, falls away entirely, and Darth Sidious stands revealed in the fullness of his power and his malice, and any hope that a cornered Sidious might be a diminished Sidious evaporates in an instant, because the Dark Lord unmasked is a force of nightmare, the accumulated power of a lifetime of dark side mastery, unleashed at last without restraint. The confrontation takes place, fittingly, in the heart of the Republic, in the corridors of power that Sidious spent a lifetime corrupting, the seat of the government he meant to transform into his empire. The Jedi come for him. Mace Windu, changed and wiser but no less formidable. Obi-Wan Kenobi, steady and brilliant. Other masters, the best the Order has. And at the center, Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one, come to face the man who stole 13 years of his life. This is not the doomed arrest party of the other galaxy, walking into a trap. This is a prepared strike, a cornered enemy, a reckoning long delayed. But Sidious is Sidious, and the duel is monstrous. He unleashes the full fury of the dark side, the lightning, the raw telekinetic power, the blinding speed and savagery of a master duelist who has concealed his abilities for decades and now reveals them without limit. The Jedi press him, and he turns their numbers into a killing ground, moving with terrible grace, striking with lethal precision, wielding powers that push even the greatest of them to their limits. It is everything the confrontation in the other galaxy was, the same overwhelming display of dark power, but with a crucial difference. This time the Jedi are not caught in a trap, and this time there is a chosen one who will not fall. The duel surges through the halls of power, and the story gives it room to breathe. The clash of blades, the crackle of force lightning, the Jedi coordinating their assault while Sidious meets them with contemptuous mastery. There are losses. Sidious does not go down without exacting a price, and the confrontation with the Sith Lord of his power is never bloodless. But the Jedi hold, because they came prepared, because they saw him coming, because for once the light struck with clarity instead of stumbling into the dark's design, and through it all, Sidious works his true weapon, which was never the lightning or the blade, but the manipulation. Even as he fights, he reaches for Anakin, because Sidious understands, with his terrible clarity, that Anakin is the key to everything, that if he can reclaim the Chosen One even now, even at this last extremity, he can still win. And so Sidious pours his malice into the one channel that has always worked: Anakin's fear, Anakin's anger, Anakin's love for Padme, and terror of losing her. He taunts, he goads, he tells Anakin that the Jedi will never trust him, that they held him at arm's length for years, that only Sidious ever truly valued him. He tells Anakin that Padme will still die, that the Jedi cannot save her, that only the power of the dark side offers any hope of keeping her alive. He tries to provoke Anakin to rage, to make the young Jedi strike him down in hatred, because a killing blow struck in hatred would be a fall, would be Anakin taking the first step into the dark, even in the act of destroying Sidious. This is Sidious's last and subtlest trap: to lose the battle, but win the war, to die at Anakin's hand in a way that damns Anakin, to make his own death the instrument of the Chosen One's corruption. It is the same trap, in essence, that worked in the other galaxy, where Anakin's intervention in the Mace-Sidious confrontation, driven by fear and manipulation, was the moment of his fall, and Sidious deploys it now with all his dying strength, because it is his only remaining path to victory. If he cannot survive, he can at least ensure that his destroyer falls with him. And here is the climax of the entire story, the moment everything has been building towards since the mercy on the ship. Anakin faces the same trap that damned him before, the same manipulation, the same fear, the same invitation to strike in hatred and take the first step into the dark. And Anakin refuses it. He does not strike Sidious down in rage. He does not take the bait. He fights Sidious with everything he has, but he fights from the light, from clarity, from purpose, from the steady determination to end the darkness rather than the hungry desire to destroy an enemy. When Sidious taunts him about Padme, Anakin does not let the fear take him. He has learned, through Qui-Gon, to hold that fear without being ruled by it. When Sidious tries to provoke his rage, Anakin does not give it. He has learned that the dark side's power is a lie, that reaching for it is how you lose everything you love. Anakin has spent the entire story preparing for this exact moment, and when it comes, he is ready. He meets the ultimate temptation, and he refuses it completely and freely, and in the refusing, he becomes the thing the prophecy always promised, the one who brings balance, not through a fall and a distant redemption, but through the clean, hard, triumphant choice of the light in the moment of maximum darkness. And that refusal is what finishes Sidious. Because Sidious staked everything on Anakin's fall, on turning the Chosen One, on making his own death a victory, and when Anakin refuses, when the Chosen One stands firm in the light, Sidious's last strategy collapses. He is beaten not just physically, but essentially. His whole understanding of how the universe works, that everyone can be turned, that fear and power always win, that the dark side is the ultimate strength, shattered by a young man who proves all of it false. Whether the final blow is struck by Anakin, or Mace, or the Jedi together, whether Sidious is destroyed or captured or undone by his own collapsing power, the true defeat has already happened. The Chosen One refused to fall, and in refusing, ended the Sith not just as a physical threat, but as an idea, proving that the dark side's central promise is a lie. The Sith are ended, not in the way the other galaxy saw it, not through decades of tyranny and a redemption purchased at the cost of a lifetime, but here, now, cleanly, through the choice of a young man who heard a voice on a falling ship and chose to be better than they wanted him to be. The thousand-year scheme, the patient darkness, the spider at the center of the web, all of it ends in the moment Anakin Skywalker refuses the dark and stands, unbroken, in the light. The confrontation with Sidious is the storm the entire story has been building toward, and it is fought on two levels at once: the level of blades and lightning, and the level of the soul, where the true battle for the galaxy has always been waged. When Sidious is finally forced into the open, when the mask of Palpatine falls away, and the Sith Lord stands revealed, the Jedi move to take him. But taking Darth Sidious is not a simple matter of numbers, as the galaxy you know demonstrated in the most terrible way. When Mace Windu confronted Sidious with 3 other Jedi Masters, the Sith Lord killed 3 of them in seconds, and turned the 4th encounter into the trap that damned Anakin. Sidious unmasked is not a cornered old man. He is one of the most powerful practitioners of the dark side who ever lived, and he has been waiting a lifetime for the moment when he could finally stop hiding his power and unleash it in full. But this time, the confrontation is different in every way that matters. This time, Sidious does not face a hastily assembled arrest party, isolated and unprepared. He faces an order that saw him coming, that has had time, thanks to Dooku and Qui-Gon and Anakin, to prepare for exactly this. This time, the Jedi who confront him are not walking into a trap, they are closing one. And this time, at the center of the Jedi line, stands Anakin Skywalker. Not the fallen Vader who once knelt to this creature, but the chosen one, whole and clear and free of the manipulation that bound him, facing the man who stole 13 years of his life with grief transformed into resolve. The duel is monumental. Sidious fights with the full unleashed fury of the dark side, and it is a horror to behold. The lightning, the raw power, the malevolent brilliance of a mind that has planned for every contingency and will not accept defeat even now. He is not merely fighting to survive, he is fighting to win, still scheming even in the midst of the duel, still looking for the crack, the weakness, the way to turn the confrontation to his advantage, as he has turned everything else to his advantage across his whole long career. He targets Anakin especially because Anakin is the key, because if Sidious can reclaim Anakin even now, even at this last moment, he can still win. And so, even as the blades cross, Sidious works his final and most desperate manipulation, reaching for every wound he ever opened in Anakin, every fear he ever cultivated, every dark seed he ever planted. You are still afraid, Sidious tells him as they fight. Your wife will still die. The Jedi cannot save her. Only I can give you the power. Strike me down in anger and take it. Take the power to save her, as you always wanted, as you were always meant to. This is your destiny, Anakin. It always was. You cannot escape what you are. It is the same seduction that worked before. In the galaxy you know. The promise of the power to save Padme. The appeal to Anakin's deepest fear. The framing of the dark side as the only path to protecting what he loves. In the other galaxy, this seduction, at this exact kind of moment, pulled Anakin down. And Sidious deploys it now with all his terrible skill, because it is the master key that has always unlocked Anakin's heart. But Anakin has changed, and the change is the whole point of the story. He has spent months now in communion with Qui-Gon, learning to hold his fear without being ruled by it, learning that a Jedi feels everything and chooses the light anyway. He has already made, on the invisible hand, the choice to spare rather than to kill, to heed the better voice rather than the darker one. He has grieved the loss of the false father and come through the grief without falling into hatred, and he has understood at last the great lie at the heart of Sidious's seduction, that the dark side's promise to save what you love is always, always a trap, that the power Sidious offers does not save, but destroys, that reaching for it is precisely how you lose everything you were trying to protect. Anakin knows this now, in his bones, because Qui-Gon taught him to see it, and because some part of him has always sensed the truth beneath Sidious's poison. And so, in the crucible of the duel, faced with the same seduction that damned him before, Anakin does the thing he could not do in the other galaxy. He refuses, not with rage. That is the crucial difference, the thing that makes it a victory of the light and not merely a change of outcome. He does not strike Sidious down in anger and take the power, which would be a fall by another name. He refuses the seduction entirely. He fights Sidious not to seize the dark, but to end it, not from hatred, but from a clear and steady determination to stop the darkness that has fed on the galaxy and on his own soul for too long. Anakin Skywalker, in the moment of ultimate temptation, chooses the light completely, finally, and freely. And that refusal is what breaks Sidious, not the blades alone. Sidious might survive the blades. What breaks him is the failure of his final manipulation. The discovery that Anakin, the weapon he spent 13 years forging, is truly and permanently beyond his reach. Sidious has always won by turning his enemies' hearts against them, by finding the fear and the anger and the attachment and using them as levers. And here, at the last, he meets a soul he cannot move. Anakin has become what the prophecy always said he would be, the one who brings balance, the one who ends the Sith. And he does it not through greater power, but through the one thing the dark side can never understand or counter, the free choice of the light over the dark, made in the very moment when the dark offers everything. How exactly Sidious falls, whether he is struck down in the duel, or captured and stripped of his power, or destroyed by the collapse of his own overreaching schemes, matters less than the manner of Anakin's victory, which is the true climax, because the galaxy you know was defined by Anakin's failure at exactly this kind of moment, and this galaxy is defined by his triumph. The Chosen One faces the Sith Master, is offered the same dark bargain that once damned him, and refuses it, and in the refusing, ends the 1,000-year shadow of the Sith, and fulfills, at last, the destiny that was always his. Not the destiny of the fallen angel, the tragic villain, the mask, and the machine. The other destiny, the one Qui-Gon saw on Tatooine when he looked at a slave boy and staked everything on his future, the chosen one, bringing balance to the Force, not through death and fire, but through mercy and clarity and the hard-won choice of the light. With Sidious fallen, the story must reckon with the man whose sparing made it all possible, Dooku, and his fate is one of the most morally interesting questions the story raises, because Dooku is not a hero, was never a hero, and does not become one simply because he helped bring down his master. Let us be honest about what Dooku is, even at the end. He aided the Jedi against Sidious not out of any conversion to the light, not out of remorse for the war he helped orchestrate, not out of love for the Republic or the Order he abandoned. He did it out of revenge, the discarded apprentice's fury at the master who arranged his death, and out of self-preservation, the ancient survival instinct of a Sith Lord playing his last cards for his own life. He is responsible for terrible things. The Clone Wars, which killed billions, was in part his creation. He led the Separatist cause, ordered atrocities, murdered without hesitation. The fact that he ultimately turned against Sidious does not erase any of that. Dooku is a war criminal who happened, at the end, to have interests that aligned with the light. That is not the same as being redeemed, and so the Order, and the Republic, face a genuine dilemma with Dooku. He was instrumental in Sidious's fall. Without his knowledge, his testimony, his proof, the Sith Master might well have won. Justice for his crimes must be weighed against the debt owed for his help. And there is the further, queasier question of what to do with a living Sith Lord, in a galaxy that is finally, for the first time in 1,000 years, free of the Sith. Dooku is powerful, brilliant, and fundamentally untrustworthy. To free him is to unleash a known danger. To execute him is to kill the being who saved the galaxy, and to do it in a way that sits uncomfortably close to the very Sith ruthlessness the Order is supposed to reject. The story does not give Dooku an easy or a sentimental ending, because an easy ending would betray the character. Different resolutions are possible, and each says something true. Perhaps Dooku is imprisoned, spared execution in recognition of his help, but never freed, living out his days as the galaxy's most dangerous prisoner, a Sith Lord in a cell, contemplating the strange path that led him from Sidious's right hand to a Jedi jail. Perhaps he is granted a kind of freedom under permanent watch, too valuable and too dangerous to kill or to release, existing in a gray space that suits the gray character he always was. Or perhaps Dooku, having achieved his revenge, having watched his master fall, having played out the last game of his long life, simply chooses his own ending, a final act of aristocratic control, refusing to let the Republic decide his fate, exiting the story on his own terms as he lived it. But there is one thing the story does give Dooku, and it is the most interesting thing about his arc, a strange, grudging, unwilling encounter with the possibility that he was wrong. Not wrong about the Republic being corrupt. Dooku's critique of the old Republic was, in its way, accurate, and the story does not pretend otherwise, but wrong about the deeper thing. Dooku left the Jedi Order convinced that its way was weak, that compassion was a limitation, that real change required the ruthlessness of the dark, and then he watched a young Jedi spare his life out of mercy, and that mercy is the only reason Dooku lived to see his revenge. He watched Anakin refuse Sidious's power out of love and clarity, and that refusal is what finally broke the Master Dooku could never defeat. Dooku spent his life believing the dark side was strength and the light was weakness, and at the end, he is forced to witness the light accomplish what all his darkness never could, the actual final destruction of the Sith. It does not redeem him. Dooku is too proud, too far gone, too committed to his own bitter philosophy to have a deathbed conversion, and the story is wise not to give him one, but it plants in him a doubt, a splinter of the terrible possibility that he chose wrong, that the boy he underestimated understood something Dooku never did, that mercy was the strength and ruthlessness was the weakness all along, and that doubt, in a being as proud as Dooku, is its own kind of justice, more fitting, perhaps, than any execution, to end his life not certain of his own superiority, as he always was, but haunted by the suspicion that a slave boy from Tatooine, armed with nothing but compassion, saw the truth that the great Count Dooku missed. There is also a quieter thread in Dooku's ending, and it concerns Anakin, because the bond between them, the strange understanding born of shared victimhood at Sidious's hands, and of the mercy that spared Dooku's life, does not simply vanish when Sidious falls. Anakin, who has learned so much about compassion and about the refusal to give up on anyone, is perhaps the one being in the galaxy who can look at Dooku and see not only the war criminal, but the man Sidious used and discarded. Anakin does not excuse Dooku's crimes, but he understands, better than anyone, how Sidious warps and ruins the people he touches, because Anakin was nearly one of them. And so, Anakin extends to Dooku the one thing the old Sith never expected and perhaps never received in his entire life, understanding without judgment the recognition of a fellow victim, even in the midst of accountability for a villain's crimes. Whether that understanding reaches Dooku, whether it cracks the shell of his pride even a little, the story leaves ambiguous, but it matters that Anakin offers it, because it shows how completely Anakin has become the thing Qui-Gon always believed he could be. The Anakin of the other galaxy killed Dooku in cold blood on a politician's order and began his fall. This Anakin spared Dooku, guided him toward the light's victory, and at the end offers him understanding. And in the whole arc from mercy to understanding, Anakin traces the exact opposite path from the one that led to Vader. Dooku's fate is the bookend of the story's central question. It began with mercy toward Dooku. It ends with understanding toward Dooku, and everything good that happened in between flowed from that first refusal to kill a helpless man on the deck of a falling ship. With the Sith Master fallen and the great deception exposed, the galaxy wakes as if from a long nightmare, and the shape of the world that emerges is unlike anything in the timeline you know. The most immediate change is the one that defines everything. The war ends, and it ends without the Republic becoming an empire. In the galaxy, you know, the Clone Wars were a machine designed to produce exactly one outcome: the transformation of the Republic into the Galactic Empire, with Palpatine crowned and the Jedi exterminated and freedom traded for security across 10,000 worlds. The entire war was engineered toward that end, and here, at the last possible moment, the machine is broken. Sidious falls before he can spring the final trap. The clones are not turned against the Jedi. The Senate does not hand away its power to a Sith in the guise of an emperor. The great darkness that was supposed to swallow the galaxy for a generation is stopped on the threshold, but stopping the darkness is not the same as everything being well, and the story is honest about the difficulty of what comes after. The war was real, and its wounds are real. Billions died in the Clone Wars before Sidious fell. Those deaths are not undone. The galaxy is exhausted, traumatized, divided by 3 years of conflict. The Separatist worlds do not simply melt back into the Republic. There were real grievances driving the separation, grievances that Sidious exploited but did not invent, and those grievances must now be addressed by a Republic that has learned, at terrible cost, how close its own corruption came to destroying it. The peace that follows Sidious's fall is not a fairy tale ending. It is the beginning of a long, hard, uncertain work of healing, the work of rebuilding a galaxy that came within a hair's breadth of tyranny and must now decide what kind of galaxy it wants to be instead. And this is where the new timeline becomes genuinely hopeful, because the galaxy has been given something precious, a warning heeded in time. In the galaxy, you know, the Republic learned the truth about its own corruption only after it had already become the Empire, only after freedom was already lost, only in the long dark years of oppression that followed. Here, the truth comes while there is still time to act on it. The Republic sees, clearly and in time, how a single patient manipulator nearly destroyed it, how its own complacency, its own corruption, its own willingness to trade liberty for security in a time of fear made it vulnerable to exactly the kind of scheme Sidious ran. And a Republic that understands its own near destruction has the chance to reform, to address the rot that let the darkness in, to become stronger and healthier than the tired, corrupt institution that Sidious so nearly toppled. The Jedi Order, too, is transformed, and its transformation is perhaps the most important legacy of the whole affair, because the Order that nearly missed the Sith Master hiding in plain sight for 13 years must reckon with how it became so blind. It must confront the ways it lost its connection to the living force, the ways it entangled itself in politics and war, the ways its rigid detachment and its distrust of emotion created exactly the kind of isolated, vulnerable young Jedi that Sidious loved to prey upon. The near catastrophe forces a reckoning that, in the galaxy you know, never came in time. A reckoning with the Order's own failures, its own blindness, its own drift from the wisdom it was meant to embody, and leading that reckoning, strange as it would once have seemed, is the influence of Qui-Gon Jinn, the maverick, the heretic, the Jedi who always trusted the living Force over the rules of the Council, and who was right, because the whole salvation of the galaxy flowed from Qui-Gon's way of being a Jedi, his belief in Anakin when the Council doubted, his trust in the living Force, his understanding that compassion and connection were strengths and not weaknesses. The order that failed in the other galaxy was the order that ignored Qui-Gon, that dismissed his maverick wisdom, that clung to a cold and rigid orthodoxy right up until that orthodoxy got it destroyed. The order that is saved in this galaxy is the order that finally learns what Qui-Gon always knew, and the transformation of the Jedi in the aftermath of Sidious's fall is in a real sense the vindication and the flowering of everything Qui-Gon Jinn stood for. At the center of the new order stands Anakin, and his position in the transformed galaxy is remarkable. He is the chosen one, who fulfilled the prophecy, who brought balance to the Force, not through destruction, but through the choice of the light. He is the hero who exposed the Sith Master, who refused the dark at the moment of ultimate temptation, who ended the 1,000-year shadow of the Sith, and he is, uniquely, a Jedi who understands the dark side from the very edge of it, who came within a hair's breadth of falling and pulled back, and who carries that knowledge as wisdom rather than as shame. Anakin becomes, in the new order, something the galaxy has never had, a living bridge between the light and the understanding of the dark, a teacher who can guide others away from the fall because he came so close to it himself, a Jedi whose compassion and whose hard-won wisdom make him exactly the kind of master the order needs to become. And there is Obi-Wan, who gets to keep his brother. The tragedy of the other galaxy was, at its heart, the tragedy of Obi-Wan and Anakin, two men who loved each other like brothers and were driven to destroy each other on the banks of a lava river, the Master forced to strike down the apprentice he could not save. Here, that tragedy is averted. Obi-Wan does not lose Anakin to the dark. He does not fight him on Mustafar. He does not carry the grief of his failure through long years of exile. Instead, Obi-Wan gets to watch his brother become the man Qui-Gon always believed he could be, gets to stand beside him in the transformed order, two Jedi who came through the fire together, the bond between them not broken, but deepened by everything they faced. It is one of the quiet joys of the new galaxy, and it matters enormously, because the friendship between Obi-Wan and Anakin was always one of the most beautiful things in the whole saga, and here, for once, it is not destroyed. The galaxy that emerges is not perfect. It is wounded and tired, and faces a long, hard road of healing and reform, but it is free. The Sith are ended, the Republic endures, the Jedi are transformed. And at the center of it all, where there should have been a masked machine breathing in the dark, there is instead a living man. Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one, whole and free, and finally at peace, who was saved by a single act of mercy on a falling ship and who used the life that mercy gave him to save the galaxy in turn. There is one more thread that must be resolved, and it is the thread that runs deepest through Anakin's whole story, deeper than the war, deeper even than the Sith. It is the thread of his fear, and of the woman that fear was wrapped around, and of the children who, in the galaxy you know, were born into a shattered family and scattered into hiding. Padme, understand what Padme represents in the tragedy of the other galaxy. She was the thing Anakin loved most, and the fear of losing her was the lever Sidious used to pull him into the dark, the prophetic nightmares of her dying in childbirth, the desperate need to find the power to save her, the terrible logic that led Anakin to believe he must embrace the dark side to keep her alive. This was the engine of his fall, and the bitterest irony of the whole tragedy was that his fall was what killed her. In reaching for the power to save Padme, Anakin became the monster whose cruelty broke her heart, and she died, as the nightmares foretold, but died of the very fall that was supposed to prevent her death. The prophecy fulfilled itself through his attempt to escape it. It is one of the most perfect and most painful tragedies in all of storytelling, and here, that tragedy is undone, not by magic, not by the erasure of the fear, but by the transformation of how Anakin relates to it, because the fear does not simply vanish when Sidious falls. The nightmares were real, Padme's pregnancy is real, the danger, whatever its true nature, may be real. What changes is not the circumstance, but Anakin, the way he holds the fear, the way he responds to it, the way he has learned, through Qui-Gon's guidance, to love without the desperate need to control and possess and protect at any cost. This is the heart of Qui-Gon's teaching, and it is the exact medicine Anakin's soul always needed. A Jedi does not love less than others. A Jedi loves more, but loves freely, without the grasping fear that turns love into a source of darkness. Anakin spent his whole life terrified of loss, and that terror was his great weakness, the crack through which the dark side entered. And here, at last, he learns to love Padme without being ruled by the fear of losing her, to hold her, as Qui-Gon might say, with an open hand rather than a closed fist. And in learning that, Anakin discovers the thing the dark side never told him, that letting go of the fear is what actually saves her, because in the galaxy, you know, it was the fear itself. The desperate, grasping, controlling fear that drove Anakin to the dark, and thus to the very outcome he dreaded. The fear was the cause of the loss, not the protection against it. And here, by releasing the fear, by refusing the dark, by choosing to love Padme freely, rather than to seize the power to possess her forever, Anakin breaks the causal chain that killed her before. He does not save Padme by finding dark power. He saves her by becoming the kind of man who does not need dark power, the kind of man who can face the fear of loss and still choose the light, and who thereby never becomes the monster whose fall was what killed her in the first place. The children are born into a galaxy at peace, and this is one of the most quietly beautiful images the story offers. Luke and Leia, for surely they are born here too, the twins whose birth was, in the other galaxy, the moment of Padme's death and the completion of Anakin's fall, are born instead into a family that is whole. They are not separated at birth and hidden across the galaxy from a father who became a monster. They grow up knowing their parents. They grow up with Anakin Skywalker as their father, not Darth Vader, not the masked machine, but the chosen one, the hero, the man who refused the dark and saved the galaxy. The whole tragic architecture of the original saga, the hidden children, the fallen father, the generation of loss and exile, and eventual painful redemption, simply does not happen because the fall that made it necessary was prevented at the root. There is something almost vertiginous about this, for anyone who knows the saga, because it means the galaxy you know, the rebellion, the Death Stars, Luke's hero's journey, the redemption of Vader at the end of a lifetime of evil. All of it, none of it happens. It was all downstream of Anakin's fall, and the fall is prevented, and so the whole future unspools differently. It is a strange thing to contemplate, an entire beloved history erased by a single act of mercy. But the story does not present this as a loss, it presents it as the point, because all of that future suffering, the burning of the galaxy, the exile of the Jedi, the deaths of billions under the Empire, the long dark years before a new hope arose, all of it flowed from Anakin's fall. To prevent the fall is to prevent the suffering, and a galaxy that never needed a rebellion because it never suffered an empire is not a poorer galaxy, it is a galaxy that was spared, and at the center of it is a simple human image that stands in stark and deliberate contrast to the iconic tragedy of the other timeline. In the galaxy you know, the story of Anakin and Padme ends with a funeral and a birth, and a man screaming inside a black mask on an operating table. Here, it ends with a family, Anakin and Padme together, their children in their arms, in a galaxy at peace. The exact thing Anakin wanted more than anything in the world, the thing he destroyed in his desperate attempt to secure it, given to him at last, because he finally learned that the way to keep what you love is not to seize it in fear, but to hold it in freedom. The nightmare that haunted him is answered not with dark power, but with the quiet, ordinary, miraculous fact of a family that lives. It is the ending Anakin Skywalker was always meant to have, and it exists because, on a falling ship, at the edge of a choice, he heard an old voice tell him to be better than they wanted him to be, and he listened. There is a final scene that the story has been earning from its very first moment, and it belongs to Qui-Gon Jinn, the man whose voice began everything, reaching across the veil one last time to the grand-apprentice he saved, because Qui-Gon's work is done. He reached across death at the one moment it mattered, and the reaching set in motion everything that followed. The mercy, the turning, the hunt, the fall averted, the galaxy saved. But a Force ghost does not linger without purpose, and Qui-Gon's purpose has been fulfilled. And so there comes a moment in the quiet after the storm when Qui-Gon speaks to Anakin one final time, not with the urgency of the falling ship, not with the careful guidance of the long hunt, but with the simple warmth of a teacher whose student has, at last, come fully into his own. What passes between them in that final communion is the emotional heart of the whole story distilled to its essence. Qui-Gon tells Anakin what he saw on Tatooine all those years ago. The light in a slave boy that the whole council could not see, the future that Qui-Gon staked his reputation and his life on. He tells Anakin that he was right to believe, that the boy became the man Qui-Gon always knew he could be, that the prophecy is fulfilled, not in the terrible way the council feared, but in the way Qui-Gon always hoped, balance brought to the Force through compassion and choice, the chosen one redeeming not only himself, but the entire future that his fall would have destroyed. And Qui-Gon tells Anakin the thing that Anakin most needs to hear, the thing that finally heals the deepest wound in him, the wound of never having felt he belonged, never having felt truly seen and valued, the wound that Sidious exploited for 13 years. Qui-Gon tells him, "You were always enough, not the chosen one because of your power, not valued because of the prophecy, not loved for what you could do, but enough simply as yourself, the boy from Tatooine with too much love in his heart." The council never gave Anakin that. Palpatine offered a false and poisoned version of it, and Qui-Gon, the one who always saw truly, gives Anakin the real thing at last, the unconditional affirmation that he was worthy of love and belonging all along, that he did not need to fall, or to seize power, or to become anything other than what he was, that he was always, from the very beginning, enough. It is the thing that might have saved Anakin the first time, if Qui-Gon had lived to give it, and now, across the veil, after everything, Qui-Gon gives it at last, and Anakin, who has spent his whole life aching for exactly this, who fell in the other galaxy partly for the lack of it, receives it, and is healed by it, and lets his old master go with gratitude and peace, rather than the grief and rage that defined him before. And then Qui-Gon becomes one with the Force fully and finally, his purpose complete, his grand apprentice safe, the galaxy saved by the single thread he reached across death to pull. He does not need to linger any longer. The boy he believed in has become the man he foresaw. The work is done, and Qui-Gon Jinn, the maverick who trusted the living Force when no one else would, fades into the light he served, leaving behind a galaxy transformed by his faith in a slave boy that everyone else overlooked. So what does it all mean? This long journey we have walked together? What if Qui-Gon stopped Anakin from killing Dooku? We have followed that single thread from a moment of mercy on a falling ship all the way to a galaxy remade. And what we have found, I think, is that the smallest choices are sometimes the largest, that the whole architecture of the great tragedy, the Empire, the fall, the mask, the burning galaxy, the generation of suffering, rested on a single moment, a single choice, a single act of murder that could have been an act of mercy instead, and that to change that one moment is to change everything. But the deeper meaning is not about the plot mechanics, about how one spared life unravels a Sith scheme. The deeper meaning is about Anakin and about all of us. Because Anakin's fall in the other galaxy was never really about power or politics. It was about fear, the fear of loss, the desperate grasping need to control and protect, the inability to trust and to let go. And his salvation here is not about a lightsaber duel or a political thriller. It is about learning to hold his fear without being ruled by it, learning to love without grasping, learning to choose the light not because it is easy, but because it is right. The mercy toward Dooku was the first small exercise of that strength, and everything that followed, the resistance to Sidious, the refusal of the dark, the family that lives, the galaxy that is spared, flowed from Anakin slowly becoming the kind of person who could make that choice again and again, in ever greater moments, until the fate of the galaxy turned on it. That is the hope this story offers, and it is a hope that reaches beyond the galaxy far, far away, that we are not doomed by our worst impulses, that the fall is not inevitable, that even the person most certain to become a monster can, given one moment of grace, one voice reaching across the dark, to say be better than they want you to be, choose a different path. Anakin Skywalker was the chosen one in every timeline. In one, he brought balance through decades of tragedy, a fallen angel redeemed only at the very end of a lifetime of evil. In this one, he brought balance through a single act of mercy and everything that grew from it, and saved not only himself, but the entire future his fall would have consumed. Both are true, both are Star Wars, but this one, the one where the mercy comes early, where the voice breaks through in time, where the boy from Tatooine becomes the man he was always meant to be. This one, I think, is the one Qui-Gon Jinn always believed in. Thank you for walking this whole long journey with me, all the way to the end. If it moved you, if you love imagining the Star Wars that might have been, consider liking the video, sharing it with someone who'd appreciate a long, deep dive into the galaxy's greatest what-ifs, and sub-SC.